One of the most persistent myths we've heard about the human brain is that we only use 10% of it. It sounds almost like something out of a science fiction story, but it has been repeated so often that many people accept it as a fact. The idea is that if we could unlock the rest of our brain's potential, we could access untapped abilities like superhuman strength, telepathy, or even mind control. But is this really true? The reality is far more fascinating and complex than that. The concept that we only use a small fraction of our brain likely originated from early neuroscientists who were still trying to understand how the brain works. The myth gained traction because, at that time, scientists could not fully explain the activity in certain areas of the brain. However, with modern technology and brain scans, we now know that almost every part of the brain has a specific function, and much of it is active at all times, even when we're not consciously aware of it. Brain scans such as fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and PET, positron emission tomography, scans have helped us discover that our brain is far more active than we once thought. In fact, the brain is an incredibly busy organ, constantly processing information. It's responsible for controlling everything from basic functions like breathing, heartbeat, and digestion to more complex tasks like thinking, learning, and remembering. Every second, your brain is processing millions of pieces of information. It helps you navigate the world around you, make decisions, and even keep you alive. While certain areas of the brain are more involved in certain functions, there is no part of the brain that is completely unused or inactive. Every single region of the brain has a purpose and plays a crucial role in our overall well-being and function. Let's take a closer look at how the brain works. The brain is divided into different regions, each specializing in specific tasks. The frontal lobe, for example, is responsible for high-level functions like problem-solving, reasoning, and decision-making. It also plays a critical role in controlling our emotions, behavior, and speech. The parietal lobe processes sensory information from our body, including touch, temperature, and pain. The occipital lobe is the center for visual processing, while the temporal lobe helps with hearing and memory. Then, there's the cerebellum, which is responsible for balance, coordination, and motor skills. Even when you're not consciously aware of it, your brain is at work. When you walk, your brain's motor cortex sends signals to your muscles to ensure that you move smoothly and maintain your balance. When you listen to music, the auditory cortex processes the sound. Even when you're daydreaming or resting, your brain is busy processing thoughts and organizing information. It's actively consolidating memories and solving problems, often without you even realizing it. During sleep, your brain is still working overtime. While you may be resting, your brain is organizing memories, processing emotions, and strengthening neural connections. It's during REM, rapid eye movement, sleep that the brain is especially active, and this is the stage where dreams occur. Research has shown that sleep plays a vital role in memory consolidation, problem-solving, and emotional regulation. The myth about only using 10% of our brain likely stemmed from the fact that early neuroscientists couldn't detect activity in certain parts of the brain using outdated techniques. However, as technology advanced, it became clear that these areas were not inactive. They were simply not engaged in the same way during certain tasks. For instance, some brain regions are more active during intense concentration or physical activity, while others are engaged when we're at rest or reflecting on past experiences. These areas are constantly switching on and off depending on the task at hand, but this does not mean they're unused. In fact, when we look at the brain through the lens of modern brain scans, we can see that nearly all parts of the brain are used at some point throughout the day. Even tasks we might consider simple, like reading a book or watching TV, involve multiple regions of the brain working together. Your brain processes the visual and auditory information, links it to memories, and helps you understand the context of what you're seeing or hearing. This process is happening across different regions simultaneously, highlighting just how dynamic and interconnected the brain is. The idea that we only use 10% of our brain also suggests that if we could unlock the rest of our brain's potential, we could become superhuman. While that may sound appealing, the truth is that our brains are already working at full capacity. The 10% myth oversimplifies the complexity of the brain's functions and leads people to believe that there's some hidden reservoir of untapped abilities just waiting to be accessed. In reality, our brains are extremely efficient at performing a wide variety of tasks, and no part of the brain is truly unused. Another reason this myth persists is because it's intriguing. It offers the idea of a secret potential within us that, if unlocked, could give us extraordinary abilities. However, the human brain is far more sophisticated than that. It's not about unlocking more power. It's about understanding how the different parts of the brain work together to create everything we experience. The truth is that our brains are incredibly efficient and always engaged. We use 100% of our brain, but not all at once. Different areas of the brain are engaged depending on what we're doing, thinking, or feeling. There's no need for us to unlock unused parts of our brain because they're already functioning in ways that are crucial to our everyday lives. The myth of the 10% brain use is simply a misunderstanding of how the brain works and what we're capable of. In conclusion, the idea that we only use 10% of our brain is a myth that's been debunked by modern science. Our brains are complex and active, with every part of it playing a vital role in everything we do. From breathing to thinking to remembering, all areas of the brain are essential. So the next time you hear someone mention the 10% myth, you can set the record straight. The reality is much more fascinating. We use 100% of our brains, and it's working hard every moment of the day. Understanding the brain's complexity goes beyond simply stating that we use it all. Every day, our brain faces a multitude of tasks, some of which we may not even realize. It controls our heartbeat, regulates our emotions, and helps us navigate our environment. Think about the last time you were driving. Without even thinking about it, your brain was calculating distances, adjusting to changes in the road, reacting to traffic signals, and monitoring the movements of other vehicles. At the same time, your mind was processing what you were going to have for dinner, remembering something you heard earlier, and managing your emotions to stay calm in stressful situations. This is just one example of the brain's incredible multitasking abilities. What's even more fascinating is how our brain continues to develop throughout our lives. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, allows us to adapt and learn new things, even as adults. This means that the brain is constantly changing and adapting, making new connections as we learn and experience life. For example, when we learn a new language, our brain strengthens the areas responsible for language comprehension and production. If we take up a new hobby, such as playing a musical instrument or learning to cook, our brain adjusts and forms new pathways to accommodate this new skill. The idea that we only use 10% of our brain fails to take into account the vast complexity of our neural networks. Every thought, every action, every memory is a result of intricate communication between billions of neurons. Each neuron is connected to thousands of others, creating a vast network that processes and transmits information at incredible speeds. It's not just that we use 100% of our brain, it's that our brain is capable of far more than we can even begin to comprehend. In the end, our brains are extraordinary machines, capable of performing an astounding number of tasks all at once. From remembering the face of a loved one to solving complex mathematical equations, from enjoying a good movie to dealing with a stressful situation, our brain handles it all. The next time someone tells you that we only use 10% of our brain, remember that this is a myth. Our brain is already working at full capacity, and we are using every bit of it. One of the most commonly believed myths about sugar is that it makes children hyperactive. Many parents, teachers, and caregivers have observed moments when a child seems particularly energetic after eating sugary treats, and this has led to the widespread belief that sugar directly causes hyperactivity. However, scientific studies have consistently found no solid link between sugar consumption and hyperactivity in children. Despite this, the myth persists, and it's important to understand why. The belief that sugar causes hyperactivity seems to have its roots in a combination of expectation and social influences rather than biological evidence. The idea often comes from personal observations and cultural associations, rather than scientifically proven facts. For example, during special occasions like birthdays or holidays, children often consume sugary foods like cakes, candies, and sodas. These events are usually filled with excitement and high-energy activities, such as playing with friends or receiving gifts. As a result, parents may mistakenly link the consumption of sugar with the burst of energy the child exhibits in such an environment. One reason for the confusion is the placebo effect, where the expectation of a particular outcome leads to a perception of that outcome. If a parent believes that sugar causes hyperactivity, they may be more likely to notice a child's energetic behavior after consuming sugary foods. In contrast, if no sugar is consumed, they might attribute calm behavior to the absence of sugar, even though the child's energy levels would have been the same regardless of their diet. Additionally, many studies have been conducted to test the link between sugar and hyperactivity. In one landmark study, researchers gave children a sugar solution and observed their behavior. The results showed no significant changes in their activity levels or attention span, even after consuming sugar. In fact, several large-scale studies have concluded that there is no consistent evidence that sugar intake has any effect on a child's behavior or activity level. These studies have been conducted in a variety of settings, both in controlled environments and in everyday life, and the results consistently show no relationship between sugar and hyperactivity. So, if sugar doesn't cause hyperactivity, why do children often seem more energetic after eating sugary foods? It may be because sugar, like many other carbohydrates, provides a quick source of energy. When a child consumes sugar, their blood sugar levels rise quickly, giving them a temporary boost of energy. This can sometimes make a child more lively or excitable. However, this burst of energy is typically short-lived, and it doesn't result in hyperactivity. After the initial sugar high wears off, children usually return to their normal activity levels. This energy surge is similar to what happens when a person eats a meal or snacks on foods that provide a quick release of glucose into the bloodstream. It's a natural response of the body to a rise in blood sugar levels, and it's not unique to sugar alone. Other foods, like refined carbohydrates and processed snacks, can cause similar spikes in energy. It's important to understand that while sugar provides a quick source of energy, it's not the cause of long-term hyperactivity. Instead, hyperactivity is more often linked to other factors, such as excitement, stress, or underlying behavioral conditions. Furthermore, other factors are often at play when children become overly energetic. The excitement of an event, the presence of friends, or even the time of day can contribute to a child's mood and behavior. When children are in a stimulating environment, they may naturally be more active, regardless of what they eat. It's also important to remember that children, by nature, tend to be more active than adults. Their energy levels are higher, and they are constantly learning, exploring, and engaging with the world around them. This is a normal part of child development and is not related to sugar consumption. Parents and caregivers may also want to consider the role of other ingredients found in sugary snacks and drinks. Many processed foods that are high in sugar also contain artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives. Some studies suggest that these additives might have an impact on a child's behavior. However, the evidence for this is still inconclusive, and most studies focus on specific additives rather than sugar itself. It's possible that the combination of sugar with other food additives could lead to temporary changes in behavior, but the idea that sugar alone causes hyperactivity remains unsupported by science. The myth of sugar-induced hyperactivity is further fueled by media and popular culture. Advertising campaigns often associate sugar with fun, energy, and excitement, reinforcing the belief that sugar leads to high-energy behavior. This creates a cycle where people expect hyperactivity after consuming sugar, further reinforcing the myth. Television shows, movies, and even social media platforms often portray children consuming sugary foods and becoming instantly energetic, which adds to the perception that sugar is the cause of their behavior. The idea that sugar leads to hyperactivity has also been popularized by the rise of sugar-free diets and health-conscious trends. As parents become more aware of the negative effects of excessive sugar consumption on health, they may become more sensitive to how their children react to sugar. This heightened awareness can lead to an overestimation of sugar's role in a child's energy levels. While it's important to be mindful of how much sugar children consume, it's equally important to recognize that the link between sugar and hyperactivity is a myth. In conclusion, while sugar may provide a temporary energy boost, there is no scientific evidence that it causes hyperactivity in children. The link between sugar and hyperactivity is more of a cultural myth than a biological fact. Parents and caregivers should feel confident that allowing their children to enjoy sugary treats in moderation won't lead to behavior problems or excessive hyperactivity. Instead, it's important to focus on overall balanced nutrition, healthy habits, and understanding the real factors that affect a child's energy levels and behavior. Ultimately, the idea that sugar causes hyperactivity is a misconception that has been debunked by science, and children can enjoy sugary treats without worrying about a sugar-fueled meltdown. Humans have always been fascinated by the idea of the five senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. These are often the senses that people associate with the way we perceive the world. However, the belief that humans only have five senses is a misconception. In reality, we have many more senses than just the basic five. Our bodies are equipped with a wide range of sensory systems that help us navigate and understand our environment, and some of these senses are not as obvious as sight or hearing. The five traditional senses, sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, are certainly essential to our daily experiences. Sight, for example, allows us to perceive the world visually, detecting light and color through the eyes. Hearing lets us perceive sound through vibrations in the air, processed by the ears. Taste allows us to identify different flavors and contributes to our overall enjoyment of food. Touch gives us information about texture, temperature, and pressure through the skin. Smell provides us with the ability to detect odors, which plays a significant role in our ability to enjoy food and perceive danger, such as smoke from a fire. However, these five senses are just the beginning. Scientists have discovered that the human body actually has a variety of other sensory systems that are critical to our well-being. These additional senses help us maintain balance, regulate our internal environment, and sense pain, among many other functions. Let's take a closer look at some of the senses beyond the traditional five that we rely on every day. One of the most important additional senses is the sense of balance, also known as the vestibular sense. This sense allows us to perceive our orientation in space, helping us maintain stability and posture. The vestibular system is located in the inner ear and is responsible for detecting changes in head position and movement. It helps us stay balanced when walking, running, or even standing still. Without the vestibular sense, we would struggle to perform everyday activities like walking, driving, or even just sitting upright. It's easy to take for granted, but this sense is essential for coordinating movement and preventing falls. Another crucial sense that many people don't realize they have is the sense of temperature, also known as thermoreception. This sense allows us to detect changes in temperature through receptors in our skin. We can feel the warmth of the sun on our skin or sense when something is too hot or too cold to touch. Thermoreceptors send signals to the brain that help us react to temperature changes in our environment. For example, when we touch a hot stove, the temperature receptors in our skin quickly send signals to the brain, prompting us to withdraw our hand to avoid injury. Thermoreception plays a vital role in helping us stay safe and comfortable by keeping us aware of extreme temperature conditions. Pain is another important sense that contributes to our survival. This is called nociception, and it helps us detect potential damage to our body by alerting us to harmful stimuli. When we experience pain, it's usually a signal that something is wrong, whether it's a cut on our skin, a sprained ankle, or an illness. Pain receptors, called nociceptors, are found throughout the body, and they respond to physical damage, heat, or pressure. Pain is an essential mechanism that helps us avoid further injury and take appropriate action to protect ourselves. Without the ability to sense pain, we might not be able to react quickly enough to avoid dangerous situations. In addition to balance, temperature, and pain, humans also have a sense called proprioception. Proprioception is the awareness of our body's position in space. It allows us to know where our limbs are, even without looking at them. For example, when you close your eyes and touch your nose with your finger, you're relying on proprioception to guide your hand to the correct location. This sense is crucial for coordination and movement, as it helps the brain track the position of muscles and joints. It allows us to perform complex movements, such as typing on a keyboard, playing a musical instrument, or dancing, without needing to consciously think about where each part of our body is. Another often overlooked sense is the interoceptive sense, which helps us perceive internal bodily states. This sense provides us with information about what's happening inside our bodies, such as hunger, thirst, the need to use the restroom, or even the sensation of a full stomach after eating. Interoception also helps us detect changes in our heart rate and blood pressure. It's through interoception that we're able to sense discomfort, anxiety, or stress in response to physiological changes, such as an increased heart rate. This sense plays a key role in maintaining homeostasis, which is the body's ability to keep its internal environment stable and balanced. Humans also possess a sense of the passage of time, which is often referred to as the time sense or temporal perception. Although this sense is less clearly defined, it allows us to estimate the amount of time that has passed and make decisions based on timing. It's what helps us understand when it's time to wake up, when to eat lunch, or when to meet a friend. The brain uses a combination of sensory input, memory, and internal processes to track time, and this ability influences many of our daily activities. While we don't have a specific time organ, the brain's ability to sense the passage of time is a fundamental aspect of how we organize our lives. Another intriguing sensory system is the sense of magnetoreception, which is the ability to detect magnetic fields. This sense is more commonly found in animals, such as birds and sea turtles, that use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate during migration. While the ability to sense magnetic fields in humans is still debated, some studies suggest that we might have a limited ability to detect magnetic fields, potentially through cells in our eyes or in the brain. However, the evidence for human magnetoreception is still inconclusive, and much more research is needed in this area. While sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell are essential senses, they represent just a small portion of the complex network of sensory systems in the human body. Our ability to balance, detect temperature, sense pain, and be aware of our internal bodily states are all vital to our overall health and functioning. These additional senses help us maintain safety, comfort, and coordination in a constantly changing environment. We rely on all of these senses working together to navigate the world and to keep ourselves in balance. In conclusion, the belief that humans only have 5 senses is a misconception. In fact, humans have a wide range of senses that help us perceive the world in a more complete and nuanced way. While sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell are crucial, they are just the beginning. Our bodies are equipped with sensory systems that help us maintain balance, detect temperature changes, sense pain, and become aware of our internal state. These additional senses are critical for our survival and contribute to our overall well-being. The more we learn about these sensory systems, the more we can appreciate the complexity of the human body and the amazing ways in which we experience the world around us. One of the most enduring myths about the Great Wall of China is that it is visible from space. The idea that the Great Wall, with its colossal length and monumental structure, can be seen from orbit has been widely circulated for many years. It is often presented as a symbol of human achievement, suggesting that such a massive creation is so prominent it can be seen from the heavens above. This belief has been perpetuated by countless media outlets, guides, and even casual conversations. However, despite being one of the most famous and impressive landmarks on Earth, astronauts have confirmed that the Great Wall is not visible to the naked eye from space. The myth of the Great Wall's visibility is just that, a myth. The origins of this belief are not entirely clear, but one likely reason for the myth's persistence is the sheer size of the Great Wall. Spanning over 13,000 miles across China, the wall is a massive structure, winding through deserts, mountains, and grasslands. It's a construction of such a scale that it seems reasonable to assume that it would be visible from space. After all, one might think that something so long and built by humans would naturally stand out against the natural landscape when viewed from orbit. However, the reality is far different. Astronauts who have spent time in space and observed the Earth from orbit have repeatedly confirmed that the Great Wall is not visible to the naked eye. The wall, despite its incredible length, simply doesn't stand out as much as many people might think. In fact, when viewed from space, the Great Wall blends in with the natural landscape. It's made of materials that are very similar in color to the surrounding terrain, making it difficult to distinguish from the vast expanses of mountains, forests, and other natural features. The color and texture of the Great Wall are key factors in why it's so hard to spot from space. The wall is constructed from a variety of materials, including earth, wood, stone, and brick. These materials often blend in with the colors of the natural landscape around it. In many places, the wall is a muted gray or brown color, which is similar to the rocky earth and terrain through which it passes. Because the wall follows the contours of the land, it doesn't stand out in a way that would make it easily visible from such a great distance. The wall is not a continuous, solid line. Rather, it is a series of sections that vary in width and height, and in some areas, it is even reduced to a narrow path that is hard to notice. Another reason for the invisibility of the Great Wall from space is the Earth's atmosphere and the effects it has on visibility. When astronauts look out at the Earth from orbit, they are viewing it through layers of air that can distort their view. Dust, moisture, and other atmospheric particles often obstruct a clear, sharp view of the surface. The Earth's atmosphere can create a haze, especially over large areas like mountains, deserts, and forests, which further obscures the view of the Great Wall. While large cities or bodies of water are often more visible because of the contrast they present to the natural environment, the Great Wall doesn't have the same visibility. Unlike cities, which are made up of lights and structures that stand out sharply against the night sky, the Great Wall is a static, natural-looking structure that fades into the landscape. The claim that the Great Wall is visible from space likely gained popularity due to the romanticized idea of seeing something so grand from such a far distance. The wall is a marvel of human construction, and the idea that it could be seen from space added to its mystique and importance. It's often used as a metaphor for human perseverance and the idea that we can build monumental structures that stand the test of time. This belief that the Great Wall is visible from space taps into a larger fascination with space exploration and the desire to connect humanity's achievements with the cosmos. Astronauts who have actually been to space have offered first-hand accounts of their views of Earth, and they confirm that the Great Wall is not easily visible. For example, Chinese astronaut Yang Liwei, who spent time aboard the Shenzhou 5 spacecraft, stated that the Great Wall was not visible from his position. Similarly, other astronauts have remarked that they could not spot the wall despite its great length. Instead, they noted that large cities, with their lights and infrastructure, are more easily identified from space. Cities create distinct patterns and contrasts with the surrounding environment, making them much easier to pick out. The Great Wall, on the other hand, lacks these distinct features and blends into the natural landscape, making it difficult to see with the naked eye. The myth of the Great Wall being visible from space has also been perpetuated by popular culture, documentaries, and books, where it's often stated as a fact without any real evidence to support it. Media outlets have capitalized on the mystique of the Great Wall, and the myth has been repeated so often that many people have come to accept it as true. However, the reality is that while the wall is an impressive and historical monument, it simply isn't visible from space in the way many people think. In addition to the blending of the Great Wall with its environment, it's worth considering the scale of other features on Earth that are visible from space. For example, astronauts can easily see the outlines of large cities, highways, and even individual roads because these man-made features contrast sharply with the surrounding land. The Great Wall, despite its length, does not offer such stark contrast. It does not feature large-scale, bright, or easily distinguishable markings that make it stand out against the terrain. Therefore, it simply isn't as prominent as other structures that are visible from space. In conclusion, despite its massive size and historical significance, the Great Wall of China is not visible from space with the naked eye. This myth, which has persisted for decades, is based on the misconception that something so large and built by humans must be easily seen from orbit. In reality, the Great Wall blends into the natural landscape and is difficult to distinguish from space. Astronauts who have observed Earth from orbit have confirmed that the wall is not visible, and the idea of seeing it from space has been debunked by those who have actually experienced the view from above. The Great Wall is still an incredible feat of human engineering, but its visibility from space remains a myth. The idea that money buys happiness is a deeply ingrained belief in many cultures around the world. It's a sentiment that is often repeated in advertisements, movies, and even by people we know. The assumption is that if we had more money, we would be happier. After all, money can provide access to material comforts, reduce financial stress, and offer opportunities for travel, entertainment, and a better quality of life. But the reality is much more complex, and studies have shown that while money can contribute to our overall well-being, it does not guarantee happiness. True happiness, it turns out, comes from sources that money cannot buy: relationships, purpose, and mental well-being. Money does indeed play a significant role in our lives, and it can provide a sense of security and comfort. For example, having enough money to meet basic needs like food, shelter, and healthcare is crucial for our physical and emotional well-being. Financial stress can take a heavy toll on a person's health, leading to anxiety, depression, and even physical illnesses. In these situations, money can improve happiness by alleviating these stressors. If someone is struggling to pay rent or worrying about medical bills, the ability to solve those problems with money can undoubtedly bring relief and improve their quality of life. In this sense, money can buy a certain level of comfort and security. However, beyond a certain point, the relationship between money and happiness becomes less clear. Research has shown that after reaching a certain income threshold, the additional benefits to happiness become increasingly minimal. A landmark study conducted by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton in 2010 found that while higher income was associated with higher levels of life satisfaction, the increase in happiness was only significant up to an annual income of around $75,000 in the United States. Beyond that point, additional income had little to no impact on a person's emotional well-being. This suggests that while money can make life easier and more comfortable, it's not the key to lasting happiness. The idea that money can bring true happiness is often fueled by a materialistic mindset, which places value on possessions, status, and wealth. In a consumer-driven society, it's easy to believe that acquiring more things will lead to more fulfillment. However, studies have shown that material possessions do not contribute to long-term happiness. People may experience a temporary boost in happiness when they buy something new, but that feeling often fades quickly, leaving them wanting more. This cycle of wanting and acquiring material possessions can lead to a sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction. In contrast, people who prioritize experiences and relationships over material goods tend to report higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. One of the most important factors in happiness is the quality of our relationships. Humans are social creatures, and we derive a great deal of our emotional well-being from our connections with others. Research has consistently shown that close relationships with family, friends, and romantic partners are among the strongest predictors of happiness. In fact, studies have found that people who have strong social connections are not only happier, but they also live longer and experience better physical health. The emotional support, companionship, and sense of belonging that come from relationships are far more impactful on happiness than any material possession or amount of money. Additionally, having a sense of purpose and meaning in life is another key contributor to happiness. People who feel that their lives have a purpose, whether through their work, hobbies, or helping others, tend to experience higher levels of well-being. This sense of purpose gives individuals something to strive for, and it provides a sense of fulfillment that money cannot replicate. Whether it's contributing to a community, pursuing a passion, or caring for others, having a purpose creates a sense of value and direction that money simply cannot provide. Studies have found that people who engage in meaningful activities report higher levels of happiness, even if they are not financially wealthy. Mental well-being also plays a critical role in our overall happiness. A positive mindset, emotional resilience, and good mental health are essential for living a fulfilling life. Money can certainly help with reducing stress and providing access to resources for mental health care, but it's not a substitute for emotional well-being. People who cultivate positive thinking, practice gratitude, and build emotional resilience tend to experience greater happiness, regardless of their financial situation. In fact, research has shown that people who focus on positive experiences, practice mindfulness, and engage in activities that promote mental well-being are happier than those who focus on acquiring material wealth. While money can improve comfort and reduce certain stresses, it is not the ultimate key to happiness. The more we chase after wealth and material possessions, the more we may find ourselves feeling empty and unfulfilled. True happiness comes from cultivating meaningful relationships, finding purpose in life, and maintaining good mental health. The pursuit of money can lead to temporary satisfaction, but it's the emotional and psychological aspects of life that provide lasting happiness. There are many examples of people who have achieved financial success but still report feeling unfulfilled or unhappy. Celebrities, athletes, and business moguls often seem to have everything: money, fame, and luxury, but many struggle with feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. This is because, despite their wealth, they may lack the deeper sources of happiness, such as meaningful relationships or a sense of purpose. On the other hand, there are many people with modest incomes who report high levels of happiness, often because they have strong social connections, a fulfilling job, or a sense of community. It's also important to consider the impact of excessive focus on money on overall well-being. Research has shown that people who place too much importance on wealth and material possessions are more likely to experience stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. This is because the constant pursuit of money can lead to unhealthy work habits, strained relationships, and a lack of time for activities that promote mental and emotional well-being. People who focus on the intrinsic aspects of life, such as love, personal growth, and contribution to others, tend to have more sustainable and lasting happiness. In conclusion, while money can improve comfort and reduce certain stresses, it does not have the power to buy true happiness. Real happiness tends to come from relationships, purpose, and mental well-being. Money can help alleviate some of life's challenges, but it is not the ultimate source of fulfillment. The most meaningful aspects of life, love, connection, purpose, and personal growth, are not for sale. The key to lasting happiness lies in the things that money cannot buy: the bonds we share with others, the sense of purpose we derive from our actions, and the mental and emotional resilience we build over time. As we strive for happiness, it's important to remember that wealth alone is not enough. True happiness comes from the richness of life's experiences and the quality of our relationships. One of the most common sayings we hear when it comes to thunderstorms is that lightning never strikes the same place twice. It's a phrase often used to reassure people that once a location has been struck by lightning, it's unlikely to happen again. This myth has become deeply ingrained in popular culture, with many people believing that lightning is a rare and unpredictable event that only strikes once in a given spot. However, the truth is quite the opposite. Lightning can, and often does, strike the same place more than once. In fact, certain locations are repeatedly struck by lightning because of their height, prominence, and proximity to storm clouds. The first thing to understand about lightning is that it's an electrical discharge caused by the buildup of charge between two regions, typically within a thunderstorm cloud or between the cloud and the ground. Lightning seeks the shortest path to discharge this built-up electricity. It's a powerful and destructive force of nature, capable of reaching temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. Because lightning tends to follow the path of least resistance, it will strike tall objects or places that are closest to storm clouds. Skyscrapers, radio towers, and other tall man-made structures are frequent targets for lightning because they rise high into the atmosphere, making them the closest point to the sky. In fact, some of the world's tallest buildings, such as the Burj Khalifa in Dubai or the Empire State Building in New York City, are struck by lightning multiple times a year. These structures are equipped with lightning rods, metal rods designed to attract lightning safely and direct the electrical charge into the ground, preventing damage to the building. However, the fact that these buildings are struck repeatedly by lightning demonstrates that it is entirely possible for the same location to experience multiple lightning strikes. The frequency with which tall structures are struck by lightning is not limited to man-made objects. Tall trees, particularly those that stand alone in open fields or on mountain ridges, are also frequent targets for lightning. These trees are typically the highest point in the area and are more likely to attract lightning. In fact, it's not uncommon for the same tree to be struck multiple times during its lifetime. The myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice simply ignores the fact that tall, isolated objects are more likely to be struck by lightning again and again, as they offer a consistent and accessible target for the electrical discharge. Research and scientific observation have shown that lightning strikes often target the same places because of the nature of how lightning is formed and how it behaves. During a thunderstorm, the clouds are charged with positive and negative ions. When the charge difference between the cloud and the ground becomes too great, lightning is generated. The strike follows the path of least resistance, which often means it will hit the tallest object in the area. This explains why areas with frequent thunderstorms or tall structures are more prone to being struck by lightning multiple times. Interestingly, there are some places on Earth where lightning is particularly frequent, and these locations often experience multiple strikes in the same spot during a single storm. For example, in certain parts of the tropics, like Venezuela's Catatumbo region, lightning storms occur nearly every night, with some locations being struck by lightning hundreds of times a year. The specific geography and meteorological conditions in these areas create the perfect environment for frequent lightning strikes, and it's not unusual for the same place to be struck multiple times within a short period. The idea that lightning never strikes the same place twice might also be related to how people perceive and remember lightning strikes. Because lightning is such a dramatic and intense event, it's easy to assume that once it happens in a particular location, it's a rare occurrence. This belief is further fueled by the fact that lightning strikes are often unpredictable and random. However, in reality, the probability of lightning striking the same location multiple times is high, particularly in areas with frequent thunderstorms or tall structures that act as lightning conductors. This myth about lightning has also been perpetuated in popular culture. From movies to folklore, the idea that lightning strikes only once in a particular location has become an enduring belief. It adds a sense of mystique and drama to the phenomenon of lightning, making it seem like an event that is rare and unpredictable. However, the truth is that lightning is far more predictable than many people realize, especially when it comes to tall structures or areas prone to thunderstorms. One of the main reasons this myth persists is because of how lightning strikes are viewed in the context of their rarity. People tend to think of lightning as an extraordinary event, something that is almost supernatural in its unpredictability. While lightning is indeed a powerful and dangerous natural phenomenon, the way it behaves is not random. It follows certain patterns, and those patterns can lead to repeated strikes in the same locations. When a place is struck by lightning, it doesn't mean that it's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. It just means that the conditions for a lightning strike are right, and that particular location happens to be the best target at that moment. In reality, the belief that lightning never strikes the same place twice can be dangerous. People may be more likely to take risks in areas where lightning is likely to strike, thinking that the same location won't be targeted again. However, the truth is that certain locations, especially those that are tall or isolated, are far more likely to be struck again and again. This is why it's important to take proper precautions during thunderstorms, such as staying indoors, avoiding tall trees or structures, and seeking shelter in a safe, enclosed area. In conclusion, the myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice is simply untrue. In fact, lightning often strikes the same place multiple times, especially in areas where there are tall structures or frequent thunderstorms. Skyscrapers, trees, and other tall objects are frequently struck by lightning because they are the closest points to the sky and offer the path of least resistance for the electrical discharge. Lightning is a powerful and predictable force of nature, and the locations that are most vulnerable to being struck are often those that are elevated or isolated. Understanding how lightning behaves can help people take proper precautions and avoid the risks associated with lightning strikes. So the next time someone tells you that lightning never strikes the same place twice, you'll know that the truth is quite the opposite. The image of Vikings wearing horned helmets is one of the most enduring and iconic depictions of these ancient warriors. This image is so deeply embedded in popular culture that it's hard to imagine a Viking without their horned helmet. From movies and TV shows to Halloween costumes and artwork, the horned Viking helmet has become a symbol of ferocity, battle, and the Viking Age itself. However, the truth behind this image is far from historical. In fact, There is no historical evidence to support the idea that Vikings ever wore horned helmets. The horned helmet idea is a misconception that originated in the 19th century, and it is based more on romanticized notions and theatrical representations than on actual Viking history. The horned helmet myth likely gained traction in the 1800s, during a time when interest in the Viking Age was at an all-time high. This was a period marked by a fascination with ancient cultures, and many works of art, literature, and opera were being created that depicted Vikings as fierce, larger-than-life figures. The idea of a horned helmet fit perfectly into this exaggerated and romanticized portrayal of Viking warriors. One of the most influential sources of this image came from the opera Der Ring der Nibelungen by the German composer Richard Wagner, which premiered in the 1870s. In this opera, Wagner's characters, who were inspired by Norse mythology, were depicted wearing horned helmets. The spectacle of these costumes, designed for dramatic effect, left a lasting impression on audiences and helped cement the image of the horned Viking helmet in the public imagination. It's important to recognize that Wagner's opera was a work of fiction, not a historical account. His depiction of Vikings with horned helmets was a creative choice, designed to evoke a sense of mysticism, power, and barbarism. Wagner, like many other artists of the time, was more interested in creating a dramatic, mythical portrayal of Vikings rather than sticking to the facts of Viking history. However, his opera, along with other similar works from the 19th century, helped perpetuate the myth of the horned Viking helmet. As these artistic representations became more popular, the image of the horned helmet became ingrained in the popular consciousness, further distancing the idea from historical reality. When it comes to actual Viking history, there is no evidence to suggest that Vikings ever wore helmets with horns. Archaeological findings, including Viking burial sites and artifacts, have shown that Viking helmets were typically made from iron or steel and were simple, rounded, or conical in shape. These helmets were designed for protection in battle, not for theatrical flair. The Vikings, who were known for their seafaring and raiding, would have worn practical helmets that could withstand blows in combat. The idea of adding horns to these helmets would have been impractical and counterproductive, as horns would have made the helmets unstable and vulnerable to damage. In fact, there are very few examples of Viking helmets that have survived to the present day. The most famous example is the Geirmundbu helmet, which was discovered in Norway in 1943. This helmet is made of iron and features a simple, rounded design with a face guard, similar to other medieval helmets of the time. The Geirmundbu helmet does not have any horns, confirming that Viking helmets were utilitarian and functional, rather than fanciful or adorned with horns. The horned helmet myth is not unique to the Vikings. It's part of a broader trend of mythical depictions of ancient cultures. For example, the ancient Celts are often shown in artwork with horned helmets, but there is no evidence that the Celts wore such helmets either. The horned helmet trope is rooted in the dramatic needs of storytelling and theater, rather than in the realities of ancient warfare. It's a visual element that makes the characters appear more imposing and supernatural, but it has no basis in the actual history of the Vikings or other ancient cultures. So, where did the idea of horned helmets come from? As mentioned, the most significant influence came from 19th century art and theater. During this time, there was a fascination with medieval and ancient history, and artists were eager to recreate or reinterpret ancient cultures for dramatic effect. The horned helmet became a symbol of barbarism and strength, fitting neatly into the image of the Viking as a fierce, unstoppable warrior. This image of the horned Viking became even more entrenched during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as Viking-inspired art, literature, and performances became more common. The spread of the horned helmet image was also reinforced by the popularity of Viking-themed exhibitions, books, and films in the 20th century. As movies and television shows began to depict Vikings in their horned helmets, the myth was further solidified in the public's mind. Even today, the image of the horned Viking helmet is commonly used in popular media, merchandise, and even sports teams' logos, further perpetuating the misconception. This cultural reinforcement makes it difficult to separate fact from fiction when it comes to the history of the Vikings and their attire. Despite the absence of horned helmets in Viking history, the Vikings were known for their distinctive warrior culture and the weapons and armor they used in battle. Viking warriors, or berserkers, were often heavily armed with axes, swords, and shields. Their armor typically consisted of chainmail or leather, and their helmets were designed for protection and functionality, not for display or intimidation. The Vikings also wore cloaks, tunics, and boots made from wool or animal hides, all of which were designed to keep them warm and mobile during their journeys and raids. While the horned helmet myth has no basis in historical fact, it remains a powerful symbol in modern popular culture. It evokes the image of the wild, untamed Viking warrior, and it adds a sense of mysticism and drama to the depiction of these ancient people. However, it's important to remember that the reality of Viking history is far more complex and nuanced than the horned helmet image suggests. The Vikings were skilled navigators, traders, and craftsmen, and their true legacy is one of exploration, innovation, and cultural exchange. The horned helmet, while striking and memorable, is merely a fictional invention, one that has little to do with the actual history of the Viking people. In conclusion, the myth that Vikings wore horned helmets is just that, a myth. There is no historical evidence to support the idea that the Vikings ever wore such helmets, and archaeological discoveries confirm that their helmets were simple, practical, and designed for combat. The horned helmet image originated in the 19th century, largely due to artistic and theatrical representations of Vikings in opera and literature. This image has since been perpetuated in popular culture, but it is important to recognize it for what it is, an artistic creation rather than a historical fact. The true Viking warriors were much more complex and sophisticated than the horned helmet myth would suggest, and their real legacy is one of exploration, trade, and innovation, not dramatic costume design. One of the most widely circulated myths surrounding sleepwalking is that waking a sleepwalker is dangerous. This idea has been passed down through generations, often causing people to hesitate or even avoid waking someone who is sleepwalking for fear of causing harm. However, research and expert opinions on the matter reveal that waking a sleepwalker is not as dangerous as commonly believed. In fact, in many cases, it is safer to wake a sleepwalker than to let them continue to wander around in a semi-conscious state, where they could potentially injure themselves or others. Sleepwalking, also known as somnambulism, is a phenomenon that occurs during the deeper stages of sleep, particularly during non-rapid eye movement (NREM) sleep. It typically happens in the first few hours of the night when the body is in its deepest, most restorative sleep. Sleepwalkers may perform a variety of actions while they are asleep, such as sitting up in bed, walking around the room, or even leaving the house. These actions are done without conscious awareness, and the sleepwalker has little to no recollection of what they've done when they wake up. The myth that waking a sleepwalker is harmful is based on the belief that it could cause physical or psychological injury. One of the reasons this idea gained popularity is because sleepwalking can often involve disoriented or erratic behavior. If a person is woken suddenly while in the middle of a sleepwalking episode, they might be confused or startled. The confusion comes from the fact that the sleepwalker's brain is only partially awake. It can be difficult for them to differentiate between what is real and what is a part of their dreamlike state. As a result, they might become frightened or upset when suddenly confronted by someone, especially if they're in an unfamiliar environment. In some cases, sleepwalkers might even experience temporary emotional distress or aggression if they are woken too abruptly. However, while this confusion or agitation may seem alarming, it is generally short-lived and does not pose any long-term harm. The sleepwalker may be startled, but they are unlikely to sustain any significant injuries from being woken, and they usually return to a more normal state of awareness within moments. In fact, waking a sleepwalker is often safer than letting them continue their sleepwalking episode unchecked. This is because sleepwalkers are prone to accidents and injuries during their wanderings. Sleepwalking typically occurs when the person's brain is still in a sleep state, meaning they are not fully aware of their surroundings or their actions. As a result, they may unintentionally walk into dangerous situations, such as tripping over furniture, bumping into sharp objects, or even going outside into the street. These risks are much higher if the sleepwalker is left undisturbed, as they might be unaware of the potential hazards in their path. For example, there have been reports of sleepwalkers falling downstairs, getting hurt by sharp objects, or even leaving their homes in the middle of the night. In extreme cases, sleepwalking episodes have led to sleepwalkers injuring themselves by walking into traffic or getting caught in dangerous places. Allowing a sleepwalker to continue walking unchecked can thus lead to serious accidents or injuries that could easily have been avoided by waking them up and guiding them back to bed safely. Another factor to consider is that sleepwalking can sometimes be triggered or exacerbated by factors such as stress, sleep deprivation, fever, or alcohol consumption. In these cases, the sleepwalker may be more prone to engaging in risky behavior or moving in an erratic manner. Waking them up can help to interrupt the episode before they wander into a dangerous situation. While it's true that waking a sleepwalker can cause temporary confusion, the risks associated with letting them continue sleepwalking far outweigh the potential discomfort of being woken. Despite the myth, there is no substantial evidence to suggest that waking a sleepwalker poses any serious physical or psychological harm. In fact, several sleep studies have been conducted to investigate the effects of waking sleepwalkers, and these studies have consistently shown that waking a sleepwalker does not cause lasting harm or trauma. Most sleepwalkers quickly return to a normal state of awareness once they are woken, and the brief period of confusion they experience is not harmful. In some cases, the sleepwalker may even resume their sleepwalking behavior after being woken, but they are not at any greater risk of injury from the waking process itself. It's also important to note that there are no known long-term psychological effects from waking a sleepwalker. While the sleepwalker may feel disoriented or embarrassed after the episode, this typically passes quickly. The temporary confusion they experience is not the same as waking up from a nightmare or from deep sleep, where feelings of fear or anxiety may persist. Sleepwalkers generally return to their normal state within moments and have no lasting memory of the event, which means there is little risk of psychological harm from the act of waking them. In fact, sleepwalking episodes can be a source of concern for the sleepwalker themselves and for their loved ones. In some cases, sleepwalking can be a symptom of an underlying sleep disorder, such as sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or REM sleep behavior disorder. If sleepwalking is frequent or severe, it is a good idea to consult with a healthcare professional or sleep specialist who can help identify any underlying issues and provide guidance on how to manage sleepwalking episodes safely. When dealing with a sleepwalker, there are a few key strategies that can help ensure their safety, both for themselves and for others. One approach is to gently guide them back to bed without waking them up. If you are concerned about their safety, you can carefully lead them back to their bedroom or a safe area to prevent them from wandering into dangerous situations. If waking them up is necessary for their safety, do so in a calm and gentle manner to avoid startling them too much. Reassure them once they are awake and help them return to a comfortable and safe sleeping position. In some cases, it may be helpful to create a safe sleep environment for the sleepwalker. This can include removing obstacles from the floor, installing gates or locks to prevent access to dangerous areas, or placing padding around furniture or sharp corners. Taking preventive measures like these can reduce the risk of injury during sleepwalking episodes, and they can give both the sleepwalker and their loved ones peace of mind. In conclusion, the belief that waking a sleepwalker is dangerous is a myth. While sleepwalkers may experience temporary confusion or agitation when they are woken, there is no substantial evidence to suggest that waking them poses any significant harm. In fact, waking a sleepwalker is often the safer option, as it can prevent them from wandering into dangerous situations and injuring themselves. The risks associated with allowing a sleepwalker to continue wandering unchecked far outweigh any potential discomfort caused by waking them up. If you encounter a sleepwalker, it's best to gently guide them back to safety and help them resume a peaceful sleep, knowing that the act of waking them is unlikely to cause any lasting harm. The popular belief that Napoleon Bonaparte was extremely short has persisted for centuries, becoming one of the most enduring myths about the French emperor. This image of Napoleon as a diminutive leader who was significantly shorter than other men has been reinforced by numerous historical depictions, films, books, and even cartoons. However, the truth is quite different from the common stereotype. In reality, Napoleon was not very short by the standards of his time. In fact, he was of average height for a French man of the early 19th century. The myth of Napoleon's shortness likely stems from a combination of misunderstandings, cultural biases, and discrepancies in historical record-keeping, rather than any factual evidence about his actual height. One of the main reasons why Napoleon is often portrayed as being shorter than he actually was is due to a confusion between the French and British systems of measurement. Napoleon's height was typically recorded in French measurements, which used the pouce as a unit of length. 1 pouce was equivalent to approximately 1.066 inches, 2.7 centimeters. Napoleon's height was recorded as 5 feet 2 inches in the French system, which would seem quite short by modern standards. However, when converted to the British imperial system, where 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, Napoleon's height would have been closer to 5 feet 6 inches, 1.68 meters, which was average for a man of his era. The confusion surrounding Napoleon's height likely began when British observers misinterpreted French records. At the time, there was a significant difference between the French and British measurement systems, and British sources often reported Napoleon's height as 5 feet 2 inches in British feet, which would make him appear much shorter. This discrepancy between the two systems created a lasting image of Napoleon as a much shorter man than he actually was. Over time, this image of Napoleon as a short, aggressive ruler took hold in the popular imagination, contributing to the perpetuation of the myth. Another factor that likely contributed to the myth of Napoleon's shortness is his relationship with his bodyguards and attendants. Napoleon was often surrounded by taller men, particularly his elite imperial guard. The contrast between Napoleon and his tall guardsmen may have led people to perceive him as being shorter than he actually was. This visual contrast, coupled with the widespread belief that Napoleon was a short man, helped solidify the stereotype. In fact, many historical accounts describe Napoleon as being of average height, but the imagery of him standing alongside his tall guards contributed to the lasting perception of him as a smaller figure. Additionally, Napoleon's own stature may have played a role in the way he was portrayed in art and literature. Throughout history, artists and writers have often exaggerated certain features of famous historical figures in order to create a specific image or persona. In the case of Napoleon, his height became an important part of his mythos. The idea of a small man achieving such great power and influence fits into a classic narrative of the underdog who overcomes physical limitations to become a giant in history. This image of Napoleon as a short but brilliant military leader, who made up for his physical size with immense intelligence and ambition, has been a compelling story for centuries. The myth of Napoleon's shortness also reflects deeper cultural biases and prejudices that were common in the 19th century. During this time, physical size and stature were often associated with strength, power, and leadership. The idea of a physically small ruler was not widely accepted, and Napoleon's success as a military leader and emperor likely sparked envy and resentment among his enemies. British writers, in particular, may have exaggerated Napoleon's short stature in order to undermine his authority and diminish his achievements. By portraying him as small, they could emphasize his perceived inferiority and depict him as an anomaly who defied the traditional expectations of what a powerful leader should look like. The idea that Napoleon was short has also been reinforced by the use of caricature in political cartoons. During his reign, Napoleon was often depicted in satirical cartoons as a small, aggressive man, sometimes even portrayed with exaggeratedly short legs. These visual representations, designed to mock Napoleon and his ambitions, further cemented the image of him as a short and impetuous leader. As these cartoons spread across Europe and were reproduced in the media, the myth of Napoleon's shortness became firmly entrenched in the public consciousness. The myth of Napoleon's height has also been perpetuated by various cultural references and popular media. Over the years, films, television shows, and books have continued to depict Napoleon as a short, power-hungry leader. This portrayal has been so widespread that it has become part of the collective imagination, making it difficult for many people to separate fact from fiction. As a result, the myth of Napoleon's shortness has become almost as iconic as his military conquests and political achievements. In reality, Napoleon was an accomplished military strategist and a brilliant leader who rose to power in revolutionary France. His physical stature had little to do with his success or the historical legacy he left behind. Napoleon's leadership, vision, and military genius were what allowed him to build one of the largest empires in history, stretching from Spain to Russia. His reforms in law, education, and government continue to influence modern legal systems, and his military campaigns are studied in military academies around the world. Despite the lack of evidence for his supposed shortness, the myth of Napoleon's height endures to this day. It has become an enduring part of his legend, one that has been passed down through generations. In many ways, the myth of Napoleon's shortness has become a reflection of how history shapes our perceptions of famous figures. The way we remember historical figures is often influenced by the stories and myths that are created around them, rather than the objective facts of their lives. Napoleon's supposed shortness is just one example of how myths and misconceptions can become entrenched in our collective memory, despite evidence to the contrary. In conclusion, the myth that Napoleon was very short is based on a misunderstanding of historical measurements and cultural biases. Napoleon was actually of average height for his time, and the idea of him being exceptionally short likely arose from a combination of confusion between French and British measurement systems, visual contrasts with his tall bodyguards, and the influence of art and literature that sought to create a specific image of him as a smaller, more remarkable figure. This myth has persisted for centuries, and it continues to shape how we view Napoleon today. However, when we look at the facts, it becomes clear that Napoleon was not the short, diminutive leader he is often portrayed as, but rather a powerful and capable ruler who made a lasting impact on history. The myth that swallowed gum stays in your stomach for 7 years is one of the most widely circulated and persistent pieces of misinformation when it comes to digestive health. This myth has been told and retold for generations, often by well-meaning parents who wanted to warn their children about the potential dangers of swallowing gum. The idea that gum remains stuck in your stomach or intestines for years is not only inaccurate, but it also misrepresents the body's remarkable ability to process and eliminate substances. The truth is far simpler and less alarming. Gum is not digested like food, but it passes through the digestive system and is eliminated naturally, much like any other substance that the body cannot break down. To understand why this myth is so widespread, it's important to first look at how gum is made and why it doesn't get digested in the same way that regular food does. Chewing gum is made from a base that consists of a combination of synthetic or natural rubber, sweeteners, flavorings, and sometimes colorings. The rubbery base is designed to give the gum its chewy texture, but it is also resistant to the digestive enzymes in your stomach that break down most other foods. This resistance to digestion is part of why gum doesn't get broken down like other foods. However, this does not mean that it stays in your body for years. When you swallow gum, it enters the digestive tract just like any other substance you swallow. The body's digestive system processes food in stages, starting with chewing, where enzymes in saliva begin the breakdown of food. Once the food reaches the stomach, it is mixed with gastric juices that further break down nutrients. From there, it moves to the small intestine, where nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream. Substances that cannot be digested or absorbed, such as fiber or non-digestible materials, move into the large intestine and eventually leave the body in the form of waste. Gum, however, is made of ingredients that the body can't process or absorb. The rubbery gum base, though resistant to stomach acids and enzymes, is not something the body will hold on to. Instead, it moves through the digestive system just like any other indigestible substance. Once it reaches the large intestine, it is excreted from the body in the same way as other non-digestible substances. It may take a little longer for gum to pass through your system compared to easily digestible foods, but it will ultimately be eliminated in a normal bowel movement. There is no evidence to suggest that gum lingers in the stomach or intestines for years, and it certainly does not stay stuck in the body for 7 years as the myth suggests. The origins of the 7 years myth are unclear, but it likely emerged as a cautionary tale to discourage children from swallowing gum, which could be a potential choking hazard if swallowed in large quantities. The idea that gum would stay in the stomach for years created a sense of urgency around the practice, making children believe that swallowing gum would have long-lasting and dangerous effects. While it's true that swallowing large amounts of gum or multiple pieces at once may lead to potential digestive issues, such as a blockage in rare cases, the body's digestive system is more than capable of handling a small amount of swallowed gum. In fact, The myth that swallowed gum stays in your stomach for 7 years is scientifically unfounded. The body's digestive system is designed to handle many types of food and non-food substances, and it has various mechanisms in place to move things through the gastrointestinal tract efficiently. If gum were to stay in your stomach for an extended period of time, it could lead to a serious condition called bezoar formation, which occurs when indigestible substances like hair, fibers, or food particles accumulate and form a mass in the stomach. However, bezoars are extremely rare and typically occur when large quantities of material are swallowed, such as hair or certain types of medications, rather than chewing gum. In the case of gum, while it is not digested, it poses little risk when swallowed in moderation. The body simply treats it as an indigestible substance and moves it through the system without any lasting effects. Even if someone swallows a piece of gum occasionally, there is no reason to worry about it staying in the stomach for an extended period of time. The body's digestive system is remarkably efficient, and it can process and eliminate gum in a timely manner, just as it does with many other indigestible substances. It's also worth noting that the myth that gum stays in the stomach for 7 years likely gained popularity due to its simplicity and the dramatic nature of the claim. The idea of something staying in the body for years evokes a sense of mystery and danger, which makes it a more memorable and effective warning. It's a cautionary tale that was likely passed down through generations, reinforcing the idea that swallowing gum is something to be avoided at all costs. In reality, the digestive system is much more capable of handling gum than most people realize, and there is no need for concern when it comes to swallowing it. While the myth of gum staying in the stomach for 7 years is inaccurate, there are some real concerns related to swallowing gum, particularly in large quantities. For instance, swallowing multiple pieces of gum at once, especially in combination with other indigestible materials, could lead to digestive blockages. In such cases, the gum could potentially cause a blockage in the intestines, which may require medical attention. However, such occurrences are extremely rare and typically involve situations where large amounts of gum are swallowed, not just a single piece. In conclusion, the myth that swallowed gum stays in your stomach for 7 years is entirely false. Gum is not digested by the body in the same way as food, but it passes through the digestive system and is eliminated naturally without causing harm. The idea that it stays in the stomach for years is based on a misunderstanding of how the digestive system works, as well as a desire to create a cautionary tale that would deter children from swallowing gum. The body is more than capable of handling small amounts of gum, and it is excreted in the same manner as other indigestible substances. While it's important to be cautious about swallowing gum in large quantities, there is no need to worry about it lingering in the stomach for an extended period of time. The digestive system is efficient and designed to process and eliminate substances that cannot be broken down or absorbed, including chewing gum. The idea that chameleons change color solely for camouflage is one of the most popular myths surrounding these fascinating creatures. Chameleons, known for their remarkable ability to alter the color of their skin, are often depicted as masters of disguise, blending seamlessly into their surroundings to avoid predators or ambush prey. This image has been ingrained in popular culture through documentaries, books, and wildlife shows, making it a widely accepted truth that chameleons change their color primarily to blend in. However, the reality is far more nuanced, and the reasons behind a chameleon's color-changing abilities are much more complex than simply camouflaging itself in the environment. While camouflage is certainly one of the factors that can trigger a color change in chameleons, it is far from the only reason. In fact, chameleons primarily change color for communication, temperature regulation, and even social interaction. Their ability to alter their color is a sophisticated biological mechanism that serves multiple purposes, allowing them to adapt to a wide range of environmental and social conditions. First and foremost, color change in chameleons plays a significant role in communication. In many species of chameleons, color changes are used to convey information to other chameleons, particularly when it comes to social dominance, mating behavior, and territorial disputes. For example, a male chameleon may display brighter, more intense colors, such as vibrant oranges, reds, or yellows, to signal his strength and dominance to other males. This color display is often used in territorial battles, where the most colorful male is usually the most dominant. These color changes are not just random or incidental, they are a form of visual communication that helps establish social hierarchy and determine the outcomes of confrontations. In addition to signaling dominance, color changes are also used by chameleons during courtship and mating rituals. During the breeding season, males often display more vibrant and vivid colors to attract females. The intensity and variety of colors can indicate the male's health, genetic quality, and overall fitness, making color change a critical component of the chameleon's mating strategy. Females may also change color in response to a male's display, signaling their receptiveness or disinterest. These color changes are an essential part of the chameleon's reproductive process, helping them to select the best mate and ensure the continuation of their species. Furthermore, chameleons change color to regulate their body temperature. This is a vital part of their survival strategy, as these reptiles are ectothermic, meaning they rely on external sources of heat to regulate their body temperature. When a chameleon is too cold, it will darken its skin to absorb more heat from the sun. Dark colors, such as browns and blacks, absorb more light and warmth, allowing the chameleon to raise its body temperature more effectively. Conversely, when a chameleon is too hot, it will lighten its skin to reflect more sunlight and reduce its body temperature. Lighter colors, such as pale greens and yellows, reflect light and heat, helping the chameleon avoid overheating in hot environments. This ability to regulate temperature through color change is especially important for chameleons that live in areas with fluctuating temperatures, such as deserts or tropical forests. In these environments, chameleons must carefully manage their body temperature to avoid becoming too cold at night or too hot during the day. The ability to adjust their color in response to environmental temperature is a crucial adaptation that allows them to survive in a wide range of habitats. While communication and temperature regulation are the primary reasons chameleons change color, camouflage can also play a role, particularly in avoiding predators. However, this is not the primary function of their color-changing ability, as many people tend to believe. Chameleons do change color to blend into their environment when they feel threatened or stressed, but this response is often secondary to their need for social interaction and temperature control. In fact, chameleons are not always perfect at blending into their surroundings, and their color-changing abilities are not always foolproof when it comes to hiding from predators. For instance, when a chameleon is threatened, it may not change its color to match the exact hue of its surroundings. Instead, it may opt for a color that reflects its emotional state, such as a darker color when it feels stressed or threatened. This darker color is more likely to signal to other chameleons that the animal is frightened or upset, rather than providing perfect camouflage. It is also important to note that chameleons do not have the same ability to change color as some other animals, such as octopuses or cuttlefish, which can alter their appearance in a much more dynamic way. Chameleons can only change color within a certain range of hues, and the extent of their color-changing ability depends on the species and the individual. In addition to these primary functions, chameleons may also change color as a response to other environmental factors, such as lighting, humidity, or the presence of other animals. For example, in areas with bright sunlight, chameleons may darken their skin to absorb more heat and protect themselves from ultraviolet radiation. Similarly, in areas with high humidity or dense vegetation, chameleons may adopt a more vibrant color to blend in with their environment and avoid being seen by predators or prey. It is also worth noting that not all chameleons have the same color-changing abilities. While most species of chameleons can change color to some extent, the degree to which they can alter their appearance varies widely. Some species, such as the veiled chameleon or the panther chameleon, are capable of dramatic color changes, shifting from bright greens to vibrant oranges and reds in a matter of seconds. Other species, such as the Jackson's chameleon, have a more limited range of colors and may only change their hue slightly in response to environmental factors. The intensity and range of a chameleon's color-changing ability are influenced by genetics, environmental conditions, and the individual's physical health. In conclusion, while chameleons are often thought of as masters of camouflage, the truth is that they change color for a variety of reasons, not just to blend into their surroundings. Communication, temperature regulation, and social signaling are the primary functions of a chameleon's color-changing ability. While camouflage can play a role in helping chameleons avoid predators, it is not the sole reason for their remarkable ability to alter their appearance. Instead, chameleons use color change as a versatile tool that helps them navigate the complexities of their environment, communicate with other chameleons, regulate their body temperature, and adapt to changing conditions. The myth that chameleons change color exclusively for camouflage is an oversimplification of the true purpose of their color-changing ability, and a deeper understanding of these creatures reveals the many fascinating ways they use this skill to survive and thrive in the wild. The myth that hair and nails continue to grow after death is one of the most widely accepted and persistent misconceptions about the human body. This idea has been passed down through generations, often cited as evidence of the mysterious processes that occur after death. It is often mentioned in relation to embalming or in movies and books that deal with death and the afterlife. People are often surprised by the notion that the body can still change or show signs of life long after someone has passed away. However, the truth is that while it may appear as though hair and nails continue to grow after death, this is not actually the case. The process is much more complicated and has everything to do with how the body changes after death and nothing to do with continued growth. In order to understand why this myth exists, it's important to first examine the physical changes that occur in the body after death. When a person dies, the heart stops beating, and the body is no longer receiving blood flow or oxygen. This cessation of circulation leads to a variety of biological processes that ultimately result in the decomposition of the body. The muscles relax, the body temperature begins to drop, and various cells in the body begin to break down. During the early stages of decomposition, certain changes take place that can give the illusion of continued growth, but in reality, the body is simply going through natural postmortem processes. The primary reason for the apparent growth of hair and nails after death is a phenomenon that occurs in the skin. After death, the skin begins to retract and dry out due to the loss of moisture and the effects of dehydration. This process, known as postmortem dehydration, causes the skin to shrink and pull away from the underlying tissues. As the skin retracts, it creates the appearance of longer hair and nails, as if they are continuing to grow. In reality, the hair and nails have stopped growing at the time of death, but the skin's retraction makes it seem as though they are extending beyond their original length. Hair and nails are primarily composed of keratin, a fibrous protein that is not living tissue. Once a person dies, the cells that produce hair and nail growth cease functioning, and no new keratin is created. Since hair and nails are not vascular tissues, meaning they do not require a blood supply to grow, there is no mechanism in place to continue their growth after death. The body's metabolism halts, and all cellular processes stop, including those responsible for the production of hair and nails. Therefore, the idea that hair and nails continue to grow after death is fundamentally inaccurate. While it's true that the skin's retraction can create the illusion of hair and nails growing, there are other factors that can contribute to the myth. One such factor is the way bodies are handled after death. In many cultures, the deceased are embalmed or preserved, which can alter the appearance of the body. During the embalming process, fluids are injected into the body to slow down decomposition, and this can affect the appearance of the skin and other tissues. Additionally, funeral home workers or medical examiners may trim or adjust the hair and nails as part of their care for the body. However, none of these procedures involve continued growth of hair or nails. They are simply modifications made to the body after death. Another element that might contribute to the myth is the common practice of observing the deceased over an extended period. In some cultures, bodies are displayed in open caskets or held for viewings that last for days. During this time, the body undergoes natural changes, and the skin, hair, and nails may shift in appearance as a result of dehydration and retraction. As the skin tightens, the nails may appear longer, and the hair may seem to have grown in length, particularly if the body is being kept in a warm or dry environment that accelerates the dehydration process. This visual change can lead to the misconception that the hair and nails are continuing to grow, when in fact they are merely changing appearance due to the drying out of the body. Despite the fact that the myth of postmortem hair and nail growth is widely accepted, scientific studies and forensic evidence have proven that there is no continued growth after death. Forensic scientists have studied decomposition extensively and have found that there is no biological mechanism by which hair or nails can grow once life has ceased. In fact, post-mortem studies show that the appearance of continued growth is due to the retraction of skin and the changes that occur as the body breaks down. This process is entirely mechanical and is a result of the body's natural dehydration, not a sign of ongoing growth. In addition to the dehydration of the skin, another factor that contributes to the appearance of growth after death is the phenomenon of rigor mortis. Rigor mortis, the stiffening of the muscles after death, can affect the facial muscles and other parts of the body. This stiffness can make the facial features and body positions seem as though they are frozen in time. In some cases, this stiffness, combined with the effects of dehydration and retraction of the skin, can create the illusion that certain parts of the body are changing or growing. However, just like the skin's retraction, this is a mechanical process that has nothing to do with actual biological growth. Interestingly, the myth of hair and nails continuing to grow after death has been perpetuated throughout history, often used to explain the strange and unsettling appearance of the deceased. This idea may have originated in ancient times when people did not fully understand the processes of decomposition. Early cultures may have observed the changes in the body and interpreted them as signs of supernatural or spiritual activity, leading to the belief that the body was still somehow alive or in a state of transition. This belief likely contributed to the mystique surrounding death and the human body, reinforcing the idea that the processes of life and death are not fully understood. The myth of postmortem growth also continues to appear in literature, film, and popular media. The idea of hair and nails growing after death has been used in horror stories and movies to create a sense of the unnatural or the eerie. In many works of fiction, the image of a corpse whose hair or nails appear to grow after death is used to heighten the sense of dread or mystery. These portrayals have further entrenched the belief that growth can continue even after death, despite the fact that there is no scientific evidence to support this. In conclusion, the myth that hair and nails continue to grow after death is not based in reality. Hair and nail growth require active cellular processes that cease immediately upon death. While the skin may retract and dry out after death, creating the illusion of continued growth, this is a natural consequence of dehydration, not ongoing biological activity. The myth likely originated from misunderstandings of the decomposition process and has been perpetuated by cultural beliefs, literature, and film. However, it is important to understand that post-mortem changes in the body are the result of mechanical processes, not biological growth. Hair and nails do not continue to grow after death, and the appearance of growth is merely an illusion caused by the retraction of the skin. The belief that vitamin C prevents colds is one of the most widespread myths in the world of health and wellness. For decades, people have been told that taking large doses of vitamin C, especially during the colder months, can protect them from catching a cold. The idea has been popularized by various sources, including health experts, advertisements, and even celebrity endorsements. The myth is often seen in commercials for supplements, where vitamin C is marketed as a magic bullet to stave off illness. Despite its enduring popularity, the truth about vitamin C's role in preventing colds is far more complicated and less miraculous than this widespread belief suggests. Vitamin C, also known as ascorbic acid, is an essential nutrient that plays a vital role in maintaining a healthy immune system. It is involved in a wide range of physiological processes, including the formation of collagen, the absorption of iron, and the proper functioning of enzymes that aid in cellular repair and maintenance. It also has antioxidant properties, which help protect the body's cells from damage caused by free radicals. Given these important functions, it's understandable that many people believe that vitamin C can help ward off common illnesses, particularly colds. However, scientific research has consistently shown that while vitamin C can offer some benefits in terms of reducing the severity and duration of cold symptoms, it does not prevent you from catching a cold in the first place. A cold is caused by viral infections, most commonly by rhinoviruses, which enter the body through the nose or mouth. These viruses spread easily through the air when an infected person coughs or sneezes, and they can also be transmitted through contaminated surfaces. Since vitamin C does not directly protect the body from these viruses, it cannot prevent you from catching a cold. The idea that vitamin C serves as a shield against the common cold is therefore inaccurate. Numerous studies have examined the role of vitamin C in preventing or treating the common cold, and while some of these studies have shown modest benefits, the evidence is far from conclusive. One of the most well-known studies on this topic was conducted by renowned researcher Linus Pauling in the 1970s. Pauling, a two-time Nobel Prize winner, published a book claiming that high doses of vitamin C could prevent and even cure the common cold. His work garnered significant attention, and vitamin C's reputation as a cold-fighting miracle grew. However, subsequent studies have found little evidence to support Pauling's claims. A review of 29 clinical trials published in the Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews in 2013 found that regular vitamin C supplementation had a very modest effect on the duration and severity of cold symptoms. On average, people who took vitamin C regularly experienced a reduction in the duration of their cold symptoms by about 8%, and cold severity was reduced by about 14%. However, these benefits were relatively small and did not indicate that vitamin C could prevent a cold from occurring in the first place. Moreover, the review found that taking vitamin C after the onset of cold symptoms did not significantly reduce the duration or severity of the illness. One of the main reasons why vitamin C cannot prevent colds is that the common cold is caused by a viral infection, and the immune system's ability to fight off viral infections depends on a variety of factors, including overall immune function, genetics, and the presence of other health conditions. While vitamin C plays a role in supporting the immune system, it is not a cure-all for viral infections. The immune system has many layers of defense, and vitamin C alone is not sufficient to protect the body from the multitude of viruses that cause the common cold. That being said, vitamin C does have some benefits when it comes to reducing the severity of cold symptoms. In particular, vitamin C is known to have immune-boosting properties that can help support the body's defenses against infections. It can stimulate the production of white blood cells, which are responsible for fighting off harmful pathogens, and it also enhances the activity of immune cells like neutrophils and lymphocytes. These effects may help the body mount a stronger immune response when faced with a viral infection, leading to a slight reduction in the severity of cold symptoms. However, this effect is generally modest, and vitamin C is unlikely to prevent you from contracting a cold in the first place. There are also other factors that influence the immune system's ability to defend against colds. For example, regular exercise, a balanced diet rich in fruits and vegetables, sufficient sleep, and good hygiene practices are all important for maintaining a strong immune system. These lifestyle factors can help support the immune system and reduce the likelihood of getting sick. Vitamin C, while beneficial in maintaining overall health, should not be relied upon as the sole method for preventing colds. Another consideration is that vitamin C is water-soluble, meaning that excess amounts of the vitamin are excreted from the body through urine. This means that taking large doses of vitamin C will not result in better protection against colds and can actually lead to unwanted side effects, such as diarrhea, nausea, and stomach cramps. The recommended daily intake of vitamin C for most adults is around 65 to 90 milligrams, and it is generally best to obtain this nutrient from food sources, such as citrus fruits, berries, leafy greens, and bell peppers, rather than from supplements. A balanced diet will provide adequate amounts of vitamin C to support overall immune health without the need for excessive supplementation. The idea that vitamin C can prevent or cure colds has also been fueled by the marketing of vitamin C supplements, which are often advertised as immune-boosting products. These advertisements, while not always misleading, tend to overstate the benefits of vitamin C in preventing or treating colds. As a result, many people continue to rely on vitamin C supplements in the hopes of avoiding illness, when in reality, their immune system's health depends on a broader range of factors. Despite the myth that vitamin C prevents colds, it is important to acknowledge that vitamin C does play a valuable role in supporting overall health. It is an essential nutrient that is necessary for the growth and repair of tissues in the body. It is involved in the formation of collagen, which is vital for the health of skin, blood vessels, and bones. It also acts as an antioxidant, helping to protect cells from oxidative stress and damage. So while vitamin C is not a cure for the common cold, it is still an important nutrient for maintaining overall health and well-being. In conclusion, while vitamin C may offer some modest benefits in reducing the severity and duration of cold symptoms, it does not prevent colds from occurring in the first place. The myth that vitamin C can act as a shield against viral infections is not supported by scientific evidence. The common cold is caused by a viral infection, and while vitamin C plays a role in supporting immune function, it cannot stop you from catching a cold. It is important to focus on a balanced approach to immune health, which includes a healthy diet, regular exercise, adequate sleep, and good hygiene practices. Vitamin C is a valuable nutrient, but it should not be relied upon as a magic cure for colds. Understanding the limitations of vitamin C can help manage expectations and encourage a more holistic approach to maintaining health during cold and flu season. The image of a bull charging at a red cape during a traditional Spanish bullfight is one of the most iconic and widely recognized images in popular culture. The matador's dramatic movement, paired with the bull's fierce charge at the red fabric, creates a vivid and intense scene. This imagery has been ingrained in our understanding of bullfighting and has led many to believe that bulls are enraged by the color red. The phrase, "bulls hate red," is so prevalent that it has become part of our cultural lexicon, often used to describe situations where an animal or person reacts aggressively to something. However, the truth is far less dramatic. Bulls are actually colorblind to red, and the reason they charge is not due to the color of the fabric, but rather the movement of it. Bulls, like many other mammals, have a form of color vision that is different from that of humans. Humans have 3 types of color receptors, cones, in their eyes, allowing us to see a wide range of colors, including red, green, and blue. Bulls, however, have dichromatic vision, which means they only have 2 types of color receptors. As a result, bulls are not able to distinguish between certain colors the way humans do. In particular, they have difficulty differentiating between red and other colors, especially those in the red to orange spectrum. To bulls, red appears to be just another shade of gray or brown. The idea that bulls hate the color red is, therefore, a complete misconception. So, if bulls aren't bothered by the color red, why do they appear to charge aggressively at the matador's cape during a bullfight? The answer lies not in the color of the fabric, but in its movement. Bulls are naturally drawn to movement, as they are prey animals that are constantly alert to the movements of other creatures. The bull's behavior during a bullfight is largely influenced by the action of the matador, who uses swift and deliberate movements to guide the bull into charging at the cape. The bull's reaction is not based on the color of the fabric, but rather on its instinctual drive to respond to any movement it perceives as a threat. In fact, the color of the cape used in bullfighting, known as the muleta, is not important to the bull's behavior at all. The use of red capes in bullfighting is largely a tradition that dates back to the 18th century, when the color red was chosen because it helped mask the bloodstains that resulted from the bull's injuries during the fight. The red color, though striking and dramatic, was selected for practical reasons rather than for its ability to agitate the bull. If a matador were to use a cape of any other color, the bull would likely react in much the same way, because it is the movement of the fabric, not the color, that triggers the bull's response. The misconception that bulls hate red likely arose because of the dramatic and visually striking nature of bullfighting, where the red cape and the bull's fierce charge have become symbolic of the tension and excitement of the event. Over time, this image has been exaggerated and perpetuated by popular culture, where it is often suggested that the bull's reaction is due to the color of the cape. This has led to the widespread belief that bulls are inherently angry or aggressive toward the color red, even though this is not the case. Interestingly, other animals have different responses to color. Some animals, like dogs, are also colorblind to red, and they see the world in shades of blue and yellow. In contrast, other animals, such as certain species of birds and insects, can perceive a much broader spectrum of colors, including ultraviolet light, which humans cannot see. However, despite these differences in color vision, there is no scientific evidence to suggest that any animal is inherently angered by a specific color. Rather, animal behavior tends to be driven by more instinctual factors, such as movement, sound, and scent, rather than the color of an object. Another reason why the myth of bulls hate red persists is the dramatic nature of bullfighting itself. Bullfighting, a centuries-old tradition in Spain and other parts of the world, is steeped in symbolism and spectacle. The image of a bull charging at a brightly colored cape, with the matador's graceful yet dangerous maneuvers, has become synonymous with power, bravery, and the struggle between man and beast. This dramatic portrayal of bullfighting has contributed to the belief that the bull's aggression is directed toward the color red, when in fact it is the movement and the perceived threat from the matador that triggers the bull's reaction. In addition to the movement of the cape, the bull's behavior can also be influenced by other factors during the fight. For example, the bull may become agitated by the sounds and smells of the arena, as well as the presence of the crowd and the noise they make. Bulls, like many animals, are highly sensitive to their environment, and their reactions are often a result of multiple stimuli. The matador's behavior, the movement of the cape, the sounds of the crowd, and even the smell of blood can all contribute to the bull's heightened state of alertness and aggression. In conclusion, the belief that bulls hate red is a myth that has been perpetuated by tradition, popular culture, and the dramatic nature of bullfighting. Bulls are colorblind to red, and their behavior during a bullfight is not driven by the color of the cape, but by the movement of the fabric and the instinctual responses to perceived threats. The idea that bulls are angered by the color red is a misconception that has been passed down through generations, fueled by the visual spectacle of bullfighting. While the color red may be an important symbol in bullfighting, it is not the trigger for the bull's aggressive behavior. Instead, it is the movement of the cape, the presence of the matador, and the overall sensory experience of the arena that provoke the bull's response. Understanding this truth helps dispel the myth of bulls hate red and highlights the importance of movement and instinct in the behavior of these animals. The idea that you must wait 24 hours to report someone missing is one of the most common misconceptions about the legal process surrounding missing persons. This myth is often perpetuated in films, television shows, and even by well-meaning friends or family members who may not be familiar with the actual procedures for reporting a missing person. In reality, the notion that you need to wait 24 hours before reporting someone as missing is false in most countries and regions. The truth is that you can and should report a disappearance immediately, particularly if the person is at risk or if there are signs that something might be wrong. Waiting could potentially make it more difficult to locate the person, especially if they are in danger or unable to communicate. The origins of the 24-hour waiting period myth likely stem from old police practices, where, in some cases, authorities would hesitate to initiate a formal investigation right away unless there were clear indications of foul play or immediate danger. In the past, law enforcement agencies might have followed a policy where missing persons were treated as voluntary disappearances unless certain circumstances were present, such as signs of an abduction or health issues. However, this approach has changed over time, and it is now recognized that waiting 24 hours in many cases could delay the search and potentially put the missing person at greater risk. In most modern legal systems, there is no law requiring a 24-hour waiting period before a person can be reported missing. In fact, law enforcement agencies generally encourage individuals to report a missing person as soon as possible. The sooner a missing person is reported, the sooner authorities can begin investigating the situation and taking steps to locate the individual. Early intervention is particularly crucial when the missing person may be in immediate danger, such as if they are vulnerable due to age, health conditions, or mental state, or if there are concerns that they might have been abducted or harmed. In the case of missing children, the urgency of reporting the disappearance is even greater. Many countries have specific protocols and fast-track procedures in place for cases involving missing minors. In the United States, for example, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, operates a nationwide network for reporting and recovering missing children, and local law enforcement agencies are trained to prioritize these cases from the moment the disappearance is reported. The Amber Alert system, which is used to alert the public to cases of child abductions, is another tool that relies on immediate action in the event of a missing child. The idea of waiting 24 hours to report a missing child is not only false but could also jeopardize the chances of a safe recovery. The notion of a 24-hour waiting period is particularly misguided when it comes to adults, especially if they have gone missing under suspicious or concerning circumstances. In cases where there are signs of foul play, signs of mental health issues, or evidence that the person is at risk, immediate reporting and action are essential. For example, if someone is known to be in a dangerous situation, such as if they are suicidal, have been in a car accident, or have been involved in a violent confrontation, every moment counts. The longer the authorities wait to initiate a search or investigation, the less likely they are to find the person or gather crucial evidence. Delaying the search for 24 hours can result in the loss of valuable time, and in some cases, it can even lead to the disappearance becoming permanent. Additionally, the myth of the 24-hour waiting period is also not reflective of the advancements in modern technology and investigative methods. With the rise of smartphones, GPS tracking, and social media, law enforcement agencies are able to gather critical information much more quickly than ever before. Surveillance footage, location data, and online activity can often provide immediate clues about where a missing person might be or where they were last seen. In fact, the rapid pace of modern investigations can often lead to breakthroughs that would have been impossible in the past. This makes it even more critical to report a disappearance as soon as possible to ensure that authorities have all the information they need to conduct an effective investigation. While it is true that not every missing person case is a criminal matter or an emergency, this doesn't mean that reporting a disappearance right away is unnecessary. In fact, law enforcement agencies often encourage the reporting of all missing persons, regardless of whether foul play is suspected. Sometimes, people go missing due to personal reasons, like a disagreement with family or friends, or because they have simply wandered off. However, the distinction between a voluntary disappearance and one involving potential harm can often only be made after a thorough investigation. By waiting too long to report someone missing, it could lead to unnecessary delays and complications in solving the case. Even if someone has voluntarily left or is temporarily unreachable, early reporting helps authorities know where to start looking, and it can also prevent the situation from escalating into something more dangerous. For example, if someone has wandered away from home due to health issues like dementia or Alzheimer's disease, the quicker the authorities are involved, the better the chances are of locating the person before they get too far or get into an unsafe situation. Moreover, some people might feel apprehensive about reporting a missing person immediately, fearing that they will be seen as overreacting or being unnecessarily alarmist. However, it is important to remember that missing person cases are taken seriously, and law enforcement is equipped to handle them with professionalism and urgency. If the disappearance turns out to be a misunderstanding or a situation where the person is simply out of contact for a period of time, authorities can handle the situation accordingly. On the other hand, if it is a more serious case, early intervention can be the difference between a safe return and a tragic outcome. The 24-hour waiting period myth has also been propagated in fictional portrayals of missing person cases. Movies, television shows, and books often portray the process of finding missing persons in a way that reflects this outdated concept, where law enforcement might hesitate to take action at first. While these depictions may create dramatic tension, they are not an accurate reflection of real-life procedures. The reality is that law enforcement agencies are trained to act quickly and efficiently in all cases, and waiting 24 hours is not necessary when it comes to reporting someone as missing. In conclusion, the idea that you must wait 24 hours to report someone missing is a myth that is not supported by the legal or practical realities of missing person cases. In most countries, law enforcement encourages individuals to report a disappearance immediately, especially when there are concerns about the missing person's safety or well-being. Delaying the report could reduce the chances of locating the person and could potentially put them at greater risk. Early reporting allows law enforcement to gather information, take appropriate action, and deploy resources quickly, increasing the likelihood of a positive outcome. Whether it's a missing child, an adult, or a person with health issues, the best course of action is always to report a disappearance as soon as possible. The myth of the 24-hour waiting period should be debunked, and people should be encouraged to act promptly and responsibly when someone goes missing. The idea that each hemisphere of the brain controls specific, distinct tasks is one of the most common oversimplifications in the field of neuroscience. For decades, the popular notion of being left-brained or right-brained has suggested that people who are more analytical, logical, or detail-oriented use their left hemisphere more, while those who are more creative, artistic, or intuitive rely on their right hemisphere. This dichotomy has been perpetuated through books, articles, self-help resources, and even educational systems, shaping how we think about the brain and how we perceive our own abilities and strengths. However, modern neuroscience has shown that this view is overly simplistic, and the truth is far more complex. In reality, both hemispheres of the brain work together constantly, with overlapping functions that support a wide range of cognitive tasks. The idea of being strictly left-brained or right-brained is a misinterpretation of how the brain operates and fails to capture the collaborative nature of brain function. The human brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Historically, the left hemisphere has been associated with tasks involving language, logic, and analytical thinking, while the right hemisphere has been linked to creativity, spatial awareness, and artistic abilities. This division of labor came from early research that suggested the left hemisphere was dominant in processes like speech, writing, and calculation, while the right hemisphere was more involved in tasks like visual processing and emotional regulation. This led to the development of the left-brained and right-brained theory, where people were thought to favor one side of the brain over the other, depending on their personality or cognitive skills. However, this view is not supported by contemporary research. The most significant breakthroughs in understanding how the brain works have revealed that both hemispheres are involved in nearly all cognitive tasks, and they constantly communicate with each other through a bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum acts as a bridge, allowing information to be shared between the left and right hemispheres. Rather than working in isolation, the two hemispheres collaborate in a highly integrated way, with each hemisphere contributing to the overall process of thinking, perceiving, and acting. For example, language processing, which was once thought to be a function of the left hemisphere alone, actually involves both hemispheres. While it is true that the left hemisphere plays a primary role in understanding and producing speech, the right hemisphere also contributes to language processing, particularly in areas such as emotional tone, intonation, and the ability to understand metaphors and sarcasm. These functions are essential for effective communication and require input from both hemispheres. The right hemisphere helps us understand the emotional context of language, while the left hemisphere focuses on the structure and meaning of words. This collaborative approach to language processing shows that the division of labor between the hemispheres is not as rigid as once thought. Similarly, tasks that were traditionally thought to be purely right-brained, such as creativity and artistic expression, also involve significant contributions from the left hemisphere. For example, the process of creating a painting, composing music, or writing a novel requires both creative and analytical thinking. The right hemisphere may be more involved in generating novel ideas, seeing patterns, and thinking outside the box, but the left hemisphere is responsible for organizing those ideas, structuring them, and translating them into tangible outcomes. Creative tasks require the integration of both hemispheres, working together to produce coherent and meaningful results. This dynamic interplay between the two hemispheres highlights the fact that cognitive abilities are not confined to one hemisphere or the other but rather emerge from the interaction between the two. Even in more analytical tasks, the right hemisphere is involved. While the left hemisphere is often associated with logic, mathematics, and problem-solving, the right hemisphere also plays a crucial role in understanding spatial relationships, recognizing patterns, and processing visual information. For instance, when solving a mathematical problem, the left hemisphere may handle the numerical calculations, while the right hemisphere may contribute to spatial reasoning and visualizing the problem in a way that aids in finding a solution. This collaborative approach to problem-solving further demonstrates that cognitive functions are not neatly divided between the two hemispheres but are distributed across the entire brain. The myth of the left-brained or right-brained person is also reinforced by the way we categorize and label people based on their skills, interests, and personalities. People who excel in fields such as mathematics, engineering, and science are often described as left-brained, while those who are drawn to the arts, music, and literature are labeled as right-brained. This labeling reinforces the idea that individuals have a dominant hemisphere, leading to the misconception that people are naturally predisposed to certain types of thinking or abilities. However, this oversimplification ignores the complex nature of human cognition, which involves the entire brain working together in a highly integrated manner. In addition to the collaboration between the hemispheres, recent research has shown that the brain is far more adaptable and flexible than previously thought. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself in response to new experiences or challenges, plays a key role in how the brain compensates for injury or adapts to new learning opportunities. This means that the brain can change its structure and function based on the tasks we engage in, making it difficult to categorize people as purely left-brained or right-brained. For example, if someone suffers a brain injury that affects one hemisphere, the other hemisphere may take over some of the lost functions, allowing the individual to recover some of their abilities. This ability of the brain to adapt and reorganize further undermines the idea of a fixed, rigid division of labor between the hemispheres. The notion of being left-brained or right-brained also contributes to an inaccurate view of human potential. By categorizing people into these two groups, we create unnecessary limitations on what individuals can achieve. For example, someone who is interested in science and math may believe they are left-brained and not suited for artistic pursuits, while someone who is creative may think they are right-brained and not capable of analytical thinking. In reality, everyone has the potential to engage in both creative and analytical thinking, and the brain's ability to process information is not limited to one side or the other. By embracing the full range of cognitive abilities and understanding that both hemispheres work together, individuals can unlock their potential in ways that go beyond simplistic labels. Moreover, the understanding of brain lateralization has evolved significantly over the years. While it's true that certain functions, such as language and speech, tend to be more strongly represented in the left hemisphere, this does not mean that one hemisphere is solely responsible for a particular task. Both hemispheres work together, complementing each other and enhancing cognitive function. Even in specialized tasks, such as facial recognition or music processing, both hemispheres are involved in a collaborative process that contributes to our ability to perceive and understand the world. In conclusion, the idea that each hemisphere of the brain controls specific and separate tasks is a misleading oversimplification. The myth of being left-brained or right-brained ignores the collaborative nature of the brain and fails to account for the complex interplay between the two hemispheres. Both hemispheres work together continuously, with each contributing to a wide range of cognitive tasks, from language and creativity to problem-solving and spatial reasoning. The brain is far more integrated and adaptable than the simplistic view of hemisphere specialization suggests, and the myth of left-brained versus right-brained individuals fails to capture the true nature of human cognition. Instead of focusing on rigid divisions, we should embrace the idea that the brain functions as a dynamic, interconnected system, where both hemispheres work together to support our thoughts, behaviors, and abilities. Understanding this complexity allows us to appreciate the full potential of the human brain and highlights the importance of fostering both analytical and creative thinking in all aspects of life. The idea that cold weather causes colds is one of the most persistent and widely accepted myths in public health. For generations, people have been told that chilly temperatures and exposure to cold air make you more susceptible to catching a cold, especially during the winter months. This belief has become so ingrained in our culture that many of us instinctively reach for a warm coat, hat, and gloves when we feel a chill, convinced that the cold air itself is the culprit behind our sniffles and sore throats. However, this common understanding of how colds are contracted is not only misleading but also scientifically inaccurate. The truth is that colds are caused by viruses, not the temperature, and exposure to cold weather is not the direct cause of illness. In fact, you are more likely to catch a cold indoors, where viruses spread easily and people are in close proximity to each other. The common cold is a viral infection, most commonly caused by rhinoviruses, which are highly contagious. These viruses spread through the air when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or even talks. They can also be transmitted by touching surfaces or objects contaminated with the virus, such as doorknobs, smartphones, and even shared office equipment. The real cause of a cold is exposure to the virus, not the temperature. Cold weather does not make you sick directly. Rather, it creates conditions where viruses are more likely to spread, particularly indoors, where people gather in close quarters and share air. So, why do so many people associate cold weather with colds? One explanation is that the winter months, when temperatures drop, are also when colds tend to be more prevalent. This seasonal increase in colds has less to do with the temperature itself and more to do with the fact that people are spending more time indoors in close proximity to each other. During the colder months, people are more likely to congregate inside buildings, offices, homes, schools, and public transportation, where the air is often dry and poorly ventilated. This indoor environment is ideal for viruses to spread from person to person. The lack of fresh air circulation, combined with the fact that people are touching common surfaces and spending more time in close contact, makes it much easier for viruses to be passed along. Additionally, cold weather can weaken the immune system's ability to defend against infections. When the body is exposed to cold temperatures, blood flow to the extremities, such as the hands and feet, is reduced, which can impair the immune system's response to pathogens. Moreover, dry, cold air can dry out the mucous membranes in the nose and throat, making it easier for viruses to enter the body. This can increase your vulnerability to infections. However, it is important to note that the cold itself is not directly causing the cold. Rather, it's the conditions created by the cold that make it easier for viruses to spread and for the body to become less equipped to defend against them. One of the main reasons cold weather is often linked to colds is because of the impact it has on our behavior and lifestyle. During the winter, we tend to stay indoors more often, which increases our exposure to other people who may be carrying the virus. In colder months, there's also a tendency to engage in fewer outdoor activities, like exercise, which can help boost the immune system and prevent illness. When people spend more time inside, the likelihood of coming into contact with someone who has the virus increases, thereby raising the chances of getting sick. This indoor confinement, coupled with the fact that viruses can survive longer in colder, drier air, increases the likelihood of transmission and illness. Another reason why the myth of cold weather causing colds persists is because of the historical association between winter and illness. In many cultures, winter has long been seen as a time of sickness, with the cold temperatures, snowstorms, and shorter days creating a harsh environment that could lead to health problems. In centuries past, people had limited access to modern medicine, and illnesses like colds, flu, and pneumonia were more common in the winter, simply because people were more likely to be in close proximity to each other in poorly heated homes. This historical association between cold weather and illness reinforced the idea that the temperature itself was to blame, when in fact, it was the environmental factors, such as indoor crowding and poor hygiene, that contributed to the spread of infections. Furthermore, the symptoms of a cold, such as a runny nose, sore throat, and coughing, are similar to those of other respiratory infections that can occur more frequently during the winter months. For example, the flu and pneumonia are also more common during the colder months, and these conditions can be exacerbated by cold weather. This overlap in symptoms, combined with the increased frequency of illness in the winter, may contribute to the misconception that the cold weather itself is causing the illness, when in fact it's the viruses that are more easily transmitted during this time. The reality is that viruses, including the rhinovirus responsible for the common cold, are much more likely to thrive in certain environmental conditions, particularly in enclosed spaces where people are breathing the same air and touching common surfaces. Studies have shown that viruses are more stable and can survive longer in colder, drier conditions, which is why cold and flu season tends to peak in the winter months. It's not the temperature that directly causes illness, but rather the fact that viruses are more easily transmitted during this time. Additionally, while cold weather may make us more susceptible to illness, it's important to consider the role of other factors that can contribute to catching a cold. Poor hygiene, lack of sleep, stress, and weakened immune systems all play a significant role in determining whether or not someone becomes ill. People who don't wash their hands regularly, for example, are at a higher risk of catching a cold because they can transfer the virus from surfaces to their face. Similarly, people who are sleep-deprived, under stress, or have compromised immune systems are more likely to catch a cold, regardless of the temperature outside. These factors can all contribute to the spread of the virus and make it easier for individuals to become infected. Another important consideration is the role of vaccines and preventive measures in reducing the risk of illness. While there is no vaccine for the common cold, there are vaccines for other respiratory illnesses, such as the flu and pneumonia, which are often more common during the colder months. Vaccination, along with good hygiene practices, such as frequent hand washing and avoiding close contact with sick individuals, can significantly reduce the risk of respiratory infections. In addition, maintaining a healthy lifestyle that includes proper nutrition, regular exercise, and adequate sleep can help strengthen the immune system and reduce the likelihood of catching a cold. In conclusion, the idea that cold weather causes colds is a myth that is rooted in historical beliefs and cultural associations. While cold weather can create conditions that make it easier for viruses to spread, it is not the temperature itself that causes illness. Colds are caused by viruses, which spread primarily through direct contact with infected individuals or contaminated surfaces. The increased incidence of colds during the winter months is more closely related to factors such as indoor confinement, close contact with others, and changes in immune function due to cold, dry air. The key to preventing colds is not avoiding cold weather but taking steps to reduce exposure to viruses, such as practicing good hygiene, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and staying home when sick. Understanding the true causes of colds can help dispel the myth that cold weather itself is responsible for illness and allow us to focus on more effective strategies for staying healthy during the colder months. The myth that lightning doesn't strike the same place twice is one of the most widely believed and enduring misconceptions when it comes to natural phenomena. This idea has been repeated so frequently over the years that it's become an accepted truth in popular culture, with many people believing that once lightning strikes a location, it will not return to that spot. This belief has led to a variety of myths and misconceptions about lightning, and in some cases, it has even influenced how people perceive the risks associated with lightning strikes. However, the truth is quite the opposite. Lightning absolutely does strike the same place more than once, and in fact, certain locations, particularly tall buildings and metal structures, are frequent targets for multiple strikes. Understanding the science behind lightning and its behavior helps us dispel the myth and gain a more accurate understanding of this powerful natural phenomenon. To start, it's important to understand what lightning is and how it forms. Lightning is a discharge of electrical energy that occurs when there is a buildup of static electricity in the atmosphere. This buildup typically occurs in thunderstorms, where strong updrafts and downdrafts within the storm clouds create a separation of electrical charges. The positive charges gather at the top of the cloud, while the negative charges accumulate at the bottom. When the difference in charge between the cloud and the ground becomes large enough, a lightning strike is triggered, transferring electrical energy from the cloud to the ground. This rapid discharge of electricity is what we observe as a lightning bolt. Lightning strikes are attracted to tall structures, such as buildings, trees, and towers, because these objects are closer to the storm clouds and provide a convenient path for the electrical discharge to travel. This is due to the principle that lightning follows the path of least resistance. When a structure is taller than its surroundings, it becomes a more likely target for a lightning strike, simply because it is closer to the negatively charged cloud base. When lightning strikes a tall object, it can discharge a tremendous amount of energy, causing significant damage to the structure. This is why buildings and tall trees are often struck by lightning multiple times, especially during storms with intense electrical activity. One of the most famous examples of a building being struck multiple times by lightning is the Empire State Building in New York City. The Empire State Building, standing at 1,454 feet tall, 443.2 meters, is one of the most lightning-prone structures in the world. In fact, the Empire State Building is struck by lightning around 20 to 25 times a year. Despite this frequency of lightning strikes, the building remains intact due to its robust lightning protection system, which channels the electrical energy safely into the ground. This example clearly demonstrates that lightning can and does strike the same place multiple times, particularly when the location is tall and provides a direct path to the sky. In addition to tall buildings, metal structures are also frequent targets of lightning strikes. Metal is an excellent conductor of electricity, which makes it an ideal material for lightning to travel through. As a result, metal structures such as communication towers, radio antennas, and power lines are often struck by lightning multiple times during thunderstorms. These structures, like tall buildings, are often designed with lightning rods or other forms of protection to prevent damage. However, the fact that these structures are struck repeatedly during storms is a testament to the reality that lightning does, in fact, strike the same place more than once. Another reason why lightning can strike the same location multiple times is due to the nature of thunderstorms and the conditions that cause lightning. Thunderstorms can last for hours, and during that time, multiple lightning strikes can occur in the same area, especially if the storm is intense or if there is an ongoing electrical charge in the atmosphere. Lightning strikes often occur in rapid succession, and the electrical charges in the clouds may be replenished or redistributed, making it more likely for a particular spot to be struck multiple times. In some cases, a single thunderstorm can produce hundreds or even thousands of lightning strikes, many of which may target the same locations, particularly those with tall structures or metal components. The frequency with which lightning strikes the same location also depends on the geographical region and the frequency of thunderstorms. Some areas are more prone to thunderstorms than others, and in regions where thunderstorms are common, it is not unusual for the same location to be struck by lightning several times a year. For example, the state of Florida in the United States is known for having the highest frequency of lightning strikes in the country, and areas in Central Africa are also known for experiencing frequent thunderstorms. In these regions, it is common for buildings, trees, and other structures to be struck by lightning multiple times during the course of a year. In fact, certain areas near the equator experience lightning strikes on almost a daily basis during certain seasons. There are also natural features, such as mountains, that are more likely to be struck by lightning due to their height and prominence in the landscape. Lightning frequently strikes the highest point in an area, which can often be a mountain peak or a tall rock formation. These natural formations provide a direct route for the electrical energy to travel from the storm clouds to the ground, making them common targets for lightning strikes. As with man-made structures, these natural features can be struck multiple times during the course of a single storm or during a series of storms in the same region. The idea that lightning never strikes the same place twice likely arose from early misconceptions about the behavior of lightning and the belief that it was a random and unpredictable force of nature. This myth may have also been perpetuated by the fact that many people have only witnessed a single lightning strike in a particular location, leading them to assume that it was a unique event. However, as modern science has shown, lightning is not random but rather follows predictable patterns based on the electrical charges in the atmosphere and the physical features of the landscape. In addition, the myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice is often used as a metaphor in everyday language to suggest that once something has happened, it cannot happen again. This idea has taken on a life of its own, as people use the phrase, "lightning doesn't strike the same place twice," to express the belief that rare events or bad luck will not repeat. This metaphor has helped to reinforce the idea that lightning, like bad luck, is a one-time occurrence, when in reality, lightning can and does strike the same location repeatedly. Understanding the science behind lightning and its behavior can help to dispel the myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice. Lightning is not a random or one-time event. It is a predictable phenomenon driven by electrical charges in the atmosphere. Tall buildings, metal structures, and natural features like mountains are more likely to be struck by lightning due to their height and conductive properties. Lightning frequently strikes these locations multiple times during thunderstorms, and the idea that lightning avoids striking the same place more than once is simply untrue. Whether it's a skyscraper, a tree, or a mountain, any location that provides a direct path to the sky is at an increased risk of being struck by lightning multiple times. In conclusion, the myth that lightning doesn't strike the same place twice is a misconception that overlooks the scientific principles behind lightning strikes. In reality, lightning frequently strikes the same location multiple times, particularly in areas with tall buildings, metal structures, or natural formations that offer a clear path for the electrical discharge. The more prominent the structure or location, the more likely it is to be struck repeatedly during thunderstorms. Understanding this fact helps to clarify the true nature of lightning and dispels the myth that lightning avoids striking the same place more than once. Lightning is a powerful and predictable force of nature that follows certain patterns, and tall structures and natural landmarks are frequent targets for multiple strikes. The idea that alcohol directly kills brain cells is one of the most widespread and persistent myths in the realm of health and wellness. It has been passed down through generations, often cited as a warning against the dangers of excessive drinking. The belief that consuming alcohol will lead to the death of brain cells has been ingrained in popular culture and is frequently used to deter people, especially young adults, from drinking excessively. However, the truth about alcohol and its effects on the brain is far more complex and nuanced than the simplistic notion of alcohol killing brain cells. While it is true that heavy, prolonged alcohol use can have detrimental effects on the brain, it does not directly kill brain cells in the way that this myth suggests. Rather, alcohol can cause other forms of brain damage, which may lead to cognitive impairments and other neurological problems over time. To begin with, it is essential to understand how alcohol affects the brain. Alcohol is a psychoactive substance that alters the functioning of the brain by interacting with neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that transmit signals between nerve cells. When you drink alcohol, it affects the central nervous system, slowing down brain activity and impairing functions such as coordination, judgment, and memory. At low to moderate levels, alcohol can produce temporary effects, such as relaxation and euphoria. However, as alcohol consumption increases, it can lead to more serious consequences, including loss of motor skills, impaired cognition, and even memory blackouts. While alcohol does not directly kill brain cells, chronic heavy drinking can cause significant damage to the brain in several ways. One of the most well-documented effects of long-term alcohol abuse is the development of brain atrophy, which refers to the shrinkage of brain tissue. Brain atrophy occurs when neurons, nerve cells, lose their structure and function over time, which can lead to cognitive deficits and a decline in memory, learning, and executive functions. This shrinkage is often observed in the frontal lobes, the areas of the brain responsible for decision-making, problem-solving, and emotional regulation. The damage to these regions can result in changes to behavior and personality, as well as difficulty with complex cognitive tasks. Alcohol-related brain damage is not just about the physical shrinkage of brain tissue, it is also linked to changes in the brain's chemical balance. Chronic alcohol use can disrupt the levels of certain neurotransmitters, particularly those associated with mood and cognition, such as dopamine, serotonin, and glutamate. For example, alcohol can interfere with the normal functioning of the neurotransmitter glutamate, which is involved in excitatory brain signaling. This disruption can lead to impairments in learning and memory, as well as an increased risk of mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. Another significant factor contributing to brain damage in individuals who drink heavily is the effect of alcohol on the brain's ability to regenerate and repair itself. The brain is capable of some degree of repair and plasticity, meaning that it can reorganize and form new connections in response to damage or injury. However, chronic alcohol abuse impairs the brain's ability to repair and regenerate itself. This is particularly evident in individuals with alcohol use disorder, who often show signs of cognitive decline, including memory problems, difficulty concentrating, and poor decision-making skills. These impairments are not a result of brain cells dying directly, but rather a consequence of the disruption of normal brain functioning over time. Furthermore, alcohol abuse can lead to a number of nutritional deficiencies, which can indirectly affect brain health. Chronic alcohol consumption interferes with the absorption and metabolism of essential nutrients, such as thiamine, vitamin B1, folate, and other vitamins and minerals that are vital for brain function. Thiamine deficiency, in particular, is common in individuals who drink heavily, and it can lead to a condition known as Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, a severe neurological disorder that causes memory loss, confusion, and problems with muscle coordination. Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome is a clear example of how alcohol can cause brain damage, not by directly killing brain cells, but by disrupting the brain's normal metabolic processes and depleting it of critical nutrients. The damage caused by alcohol on the brain is particularly concerning because it tends to accumulate over time. While moderate drinking may not have significant long-term effects, excessive drinking over many years can lead to progressive cognitive decline and an increased risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases. For example, studies have shown that chronic alcohol abuse increases the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. This is thought to be due to the combined effects of brain atrophy, neurotransmitter imbalances, and the long-term disruption of the brain's ability to repair itself. One of the key factors in understanding the relationship between alcohol and brain health is the difference between acute and chronic alcohol consumption. Acute alcohol intoxication, which occurs when someone drinks a large amount of alcohol in a short period of time, can have immediate effects on the brain, including memory blackouts, confusion, and difficulty with motor coordination. However, these effects are temporary, and once the alcohol is metabolized and cleared from the system, the brain usually recovers. Chronic alcohol use, on the other hand, refers to regular, long-term consumption of alcohol over months or years. This type of drinking can lead to the gradual accumulation of brain damage, as described earlier, and is associated with more severe cognitive impairments and neurological disorders. The idea that alcohol kills brain cells also oversimplifies the complex nature of brain damage. While it is true that alcohol can cause structural and functional changes in the brain, these changes are not the result of brain cell death in the literal sense. Rather, alcohol disrupts the normal functioning of neurons, leading to alterations in their connections and communication. Neurons are still alive, but their ability to transmit signals and carry out their functions is impaired. This disruption in brain activity is what leads to the cognitive and emotional problems commonly associated with alcohol abuse, rather than a direct loss of brain cells. It's also important to note that the brain is incredibly resilient and capable of some degree of recovery even after significant damage has occurred. Research has shown that with proper treatment, including abstinence from alcohol and participation in rehabilitation programs, the brain can begin to heal and re-establish normal function. The brain's plasticity allows for the formation of new neural connections and the repair of damaged circuits, particularly in younger individuals. This suggests that, while alcohol can cause lasting damage to the brain, recovery is possible, especially with early intervention and support. In conclusion, the myth that alcohol directly kills brain cells is misleading and oversimplified. While heavy alcohol use can certainly have damaging effects on the brain over time, it does not kill brain cells in the way that the myth suggests. Rather, alcohol disrupts the normal functioning of the brain, leading to structural and functional changes that can result in cognitive impairments, memory problems, and emotional disturbances. The long-term consequences of alcohol use are more about the disruption of normal brain processes rather than the death of brain cells. It is important to recognize that the effects of alcohol on the brain are cumulative, and that moderation and responsible drinking are key to maintaining good brain health. By understanding the true nature of alcohol's impact on the brain, we can better appreciate the importance of limiting excessive drinking and seeking treatment when necessary to prevent long-term neurological damage. Mount Everest is often referred to as the tallest mountain in the world, a title that has been firmly established in popular culture, textbooks, and even media reports. The majestic peak of Mount Everest, located on the border between Nepal and China, Tibet, stands at an impressive height of 29,032 feet, 8,848.86 meters, above sea level. For many, this measurement has long symbolized the ultimate challenge for mountaineers, a lofty goal that represents the pinnacle of human achievement. However, despite Mount Everest's undeniable status as the highest point above sea level, it is not technically the tallest mountain in the world when measured from base to peak. The title of the tallest mountain goes to Mauna Kea, a dormant shield volcano located on the Big Island of Hawaii. Though Mauna Kea is not as well known or as visible as Mount Everest, it has a greater height when measured from its base on the ocean floor. The distinction between highest and tallest is an important one and has led to some confusion over the years. While Mount Everest holds the record for the highest elevation above sea level, Mauna Kea is the tallest when measured from its base. To understand why Mauna Kea is taller than Everest, we need to examine the different ways that mountains are measured and consider the full dimensions of Mauna Kea, including its submerged base. Mount Everest's height of 29,032 feet, 8,848.86 meters, is measured from sea level, which is the standard reference point for most geographic measurements. Sea level is considered to be the midpoint between high and low tide, and it provides a consistent and universally accepted basis for measuring elevation. When we measure from sea level, Mount Everest stands as the tallest point on Earth above this baseline. Its towering peak is the highest spot on the planet in terms of distance from the surface of the oceans, and this makes it an iconic landmark in terms of human achievement and exploration. However, the concept of height above sea level only tells part of the story. To understand which mountain is the tallest when measured from base to peak, we need to consider the full physical size of the mountain, including how much of it is submerged beneath the ocean. Mauna Kea, like many other volcanic mountains, originates deep beneath the ocean's surface. The mountain begins at the ocean floor, over 19,000 feet, 5,800 meters, below sea level. From its base on the ocean floor to its summit, Mauna Kea stretches a remarkable 33,500 feet, 10,210 meters, making it the tallest mountain on Earth when measured from base to peak. Mauna Kea is a shield volcano, meaning it was formed by slow, steady eruptions of lava that spread out in all directions, creating a broad, gently sloping mountain. Over millions of years, Mauna Kea has built up from the ocean floor, and it is still slowly growing due to ongoing volcanic activity. Its summit reaches an elevation of 13,796 feet, 4,205 meters, above sea level, which is significantly lower than Mount Everest's peak, but when you account for the mountain's entire height from base to summit, Mauna Kea surpasses Mount Everest by nearly 4,500 feet, 1,370 meters. It's important to note that Mauna Kea's towering height is largely hidden from view because most of the mountain is submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean. The majority of Mauna Kea is underwater, and only the uppermost portion of the mountain is visible above sea level. If you were to measure the entire length of the mountain, from its base at the ocean floor to the top of its summit, Mauna Kea would be the undisputed tallest mountain on Earth, though it remains far less famous than Mount Everest. The confusion between Mount Everest and Mauna Kea often arises because most people are familiar with the concept of elevation above sea level, which is how most mountains are measured. When considering height above sea level, Everest takes the top spot, but when considering the full vertical extent of a mountain, from base to peak, Mauna Kea's true scale becomes apparent. This distinction is not commonly made in everyday discussions, leading to the widespread misconception that Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, even though Mauna Kea is technically taller. Another interesting factor to consider is that, while Mount Everest may be the highest point on Earth above sea level, its extreme elevation presents unique challenges to those who attempt to summit it. The harsh conditions of Everest's high-altitude environment make it one of the most difficult and dangerous mountains to climb. At over 29,000 feet above sea level, the air at Everest's summit contains only about a third of the oxygen available at sea level, which poses significant risks of altitude sickness, hypoxia, and other life-threatening conditions. The treacherous terrain, extreme cold, and unpredictable weather further contribute to the challenges faced by climbers. Despite these obstacles, Mount Everest's allure as the highest point on Earth has made it a highly sought-after destination for mountaineers. Mauna Kea, on the other hand, is much less well-known in the context of mountaineering. While it is taller than Everest when measured from base to peak, it does not present the same challenges for climbers. In fact, it is not considered a particularly difficult mountain to summit, as it can be reached by car along a paved road to the summit area, where a large observatory is located. Because of its location in Hawaii and its lower elevation above sea level, Mauna Kea is also subject to milder weather conditions compared to Mount Everest. Nonetheless, Mauna Kea's true height, when measured from the ocean floor, is truly staggering, and it remains a geological marvel. Another fascinating aspect of Mauna Kea is its cultural significance to the Hawaiian people. The mountain holds deep spiritual and historical importance, and it is considered sacred in Hawaiian traditions. Mauna Kea is home to numerous archaeological sites, and it has long been a place of cultural and religious significance. The summit of Mauna Kea is also one of the best places on Earth for astronomical observations, due to the clear skies and high altitude. Several international observatories are located on the mountain, making it an important site for scientific research as well. The comparison between Mount Everest and Mauna Kea also highlights the distinction between tallest and highest in the context of mountain measurement. When most people think of the tallest mountain, they are usually thinking of the elevation above sea level, which is why Mount Everest is commonly recognized as the tallest. However, when considering the total height of a mountain from its base to its peak, Mauna Kea's incredible size becomes clear. The difference between these two measurements, height above sea level versus height from base to peak, is a key factor in understanding why Mauna Kea holds the title of the tallest mountain on Earth, even if it is not the highest in terms of elevation. In conclusion, the myth that Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world is true only when considering height above sea level. In terms of total height, from base to peak, Mauna Kea is the tallest mountain on Earth, stretching a remarkable 33,500 feet, 10,210 meters, from the ocean floor to its summit. This distinction between highest and tallest is an important one and often leads to confusion. Mount Everest is certainly the highest point on Earth, but Mauna Kea surpasses it in terms of its overall size, making it the tallest mountain when measured from base to peak. While Mount Everest's summit is far more iconic and known to climbers as the ultimate challenge, Mauna Kea remains a geological wonder, both in its true size and its cultural significance. Understanding these differences enriches our appreciation of the natural world and the way in which we measure and interpret the Earth's many breathtaking features. The idea that gold is an incredibly rare element on Earth has been a long-standing misconception, often perpetuated by its association with wealth, luxury, and desirability. Gold has been highly valued by humans for thousands of years due to its beauty, scarcity, and usefulness in making coins, jewelry, and other artifacts. It is often considered a symbol of prosperity and power, and throughout history, gold has been the cornerstone of many economies and cultures. As a result, people tend to believe that gold is one of the rarest elements in the Earth's crust, simply because of its historical and economic importance. However, while gold is certainly a valuable element, it is not as rare as many might think. In fact, several other elements are far rarer in the Earth's crust, and the actual abundance of gold is more common than its cultural and historical significance might suggest. To understand the relative rarity of gold, we must first consider the composition of the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is made up of a variety of elements, but the most abundant of these are oxygen, silicon, aluminum, iron, calcium, sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Together, these elements make up the vast majority of the Earth's crust. However, many of the elements that are less abundant in the Earth's crust, including gold, are highly prized due to their unique properties and uses. Despite its cultural and economic value, gold is not as rare as many other elements that occur in trace amounts within the crust. Gold is classified as a noble metal, meaning it is chemically inert and does not easily corrode or tarnish. This property makes gold highly useful for a wide range of applications, from electronics to jewelry, and has contributed to its long-standing value. Gold also has excellent conductivity and malleability, making it ideal for use in high-tech devices and circuits. However, despite its usefulness and desirability, gold is not an extremely rare element when compared to others that are found in the Earth's crust in much smaller quantities. Gold's abundance in the Earth's crust is relatively modest, with an estimated concentration of around 0.004 parts per million, ppm, by weight. While this may seem small, it is important to understand that gold's rarity should be viewed in the context of other elements. For example, elements like osmium, iridium, and rhodium are found in even smaller quantities in the Earth's crust. Osmium, for instance, has an estimated abundance of just 0.0001 ppm, making it one of the rarest naturally occurring elements. Iridium and rhodium are similarly rare, with concentrations that are often measured in fractions of a part per million. These elements are far rarer than gold, yet they are not as widely valued or used, mainly due to their physical properties and the limited demand for them in various industries. Another important factor in understanding the relative abundance of gold is the process by which it is extracted from the earth. Gold is typically found in ores, which are rocks that contain a high enough concentration of the element to make it economically viable to mine. These ores can be found in various geological formations, and over the course of human history, people have developed increasingly sophisticated methods for extracting gold from these ores. Gold mining has been practiced for thousands of years, and while the most easily accessible deposits have been exhausted, new methods continue to allow for the extraction of gold from less concentrated ores. Additionally, gold is also present in seawater, although at much lower concentrations, and efforts have been made to develop technologies for extracting gold from the oceans. While this process is currently not economically viable, it illustrates that gold is not as rare as the myth suggests. There are still untapped sources of gold that remain inaccessible or impractical to mine. In comparison to gold, many other elements are found in even smaller concentrations within the Earth's crust. For example, the rarest naturally occurring elements, such as astatine, francium, and promethium, are found in minuscule amounts, often in the range of less than 0.0000001 ppm. These elements are so rare that they are often only found in trace amounts through nuclear decay or in laboratory experiments, making them incredibly difficult to study or use. Despite their extreme rarity, these elements do not hold the same cultural, historical, or economic value as gold, which is why gold is often considered rare in the public imagination. One of the reasons gold has been so highly valued throughout history is that it is one of the few metals that occurs in a relatively pure, native state. Unlike most metals, which are typically found in ores combined with other elements, gold can often be found in its metallic form, making it easier to extract and refine. This purity, along with its durability and luster, made gold an ideal medium for trade and a symbol of wealth and prestige. Ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, prized gold for its beauty and rarity, and it became a central component of their economies and cultures. The discovery of gold led to the establishment of coinage systems, and over time, it became a universal standard for wealth and value. Gold's relative abundance, however, is not reflected in its cost. The price of gold is influenced by a variety of factors, including market demand, geopolitical stability, and the availability of gold in accessible deposits. When supply is limited or when demand for gold increases, such as during times of economic uncertainty, the price of gold rises. The price of gold is also impacted by the role it plays in the global financial system. Central banks hold large reserves of gold as a store of value, and gold is often seen as a safe haven asset during times of inflation or currency devaluation. This has contributed to gold's enduring status as a symbol of wealth and security, even though its actual abundance in the Earth's crust is relatively modest when compared to other elements. Despite its relatively modest abundance, gold remains a symbol of rarity, luxury, and value. This perception is largely driven by its historical significance, its role in human culture and commerce, and its practical uses in technology and industry. However, when viewed from a scientific perspective, gold is far less rare than other elements that are less widely known but just as difficult to obtain. The myth of gold's rarity can be attributed to the way in which human culture has elevated its status and linked it to notions of wealth and power. The price and value of gold have little to do with its actual scarcity in the Earth's crust and more to do with its cultural and economic significance. In conclusion, while gold is valuable and has been historically considered rare due to its physical properties and historical associations with wealth, it is not as rare as many other elements in the Earth's crust. Gold's abundance, estimated at around 0.004 parts per million, places it in the category of moderately abundant elements, with several other elements, such as osmium, iridium, and rhodium, being far rarer. The perception of gold's rarity is largely shaped by its cultural significance, its historical role as a store of value, and its practical uses in industries such as electronics, jewelry, and finance. Despite its relatively modest abundance, gold continues to hold a prominent place in the global economy and human culture, driven more by its symbolic and economic value than by its actual scarcity in the Earth's crust. Understanding this distinction helps us to rethink the true rarity of gold in comparison to other elements that are far more difficult to obtain, despite their lack of cultural or economic significance. The claim that we use 100% of our DNA is one of the most pervasive misconceptions in genetics, often repeated in popular culture and even in some scientific discussions. This idea suggests that every single part of our genetic material has a known function and contributes directly to our biology, from producing proteins to regulating cellular processes. While it's true that DNA is fundamental to the functioning of living organisms, the belief that all of it is actively used or functional in the way that some genes are is far from accurate. In fact, much of our DNA does not directly code for proteins, and scientists are still unraveling the full scope of its purpose and potential roles in our biological makeup. The notion that we use 100% of our DNA simplifies a much more complex reality and underestimates the ongoing scientific efforts to understand the intricate ways in which our genetic code operates. To start, it's important to understand what DNA is and how it functions. DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is the genetic material found in the cells of all living organisms. It contains the instructions for building and maintaining the structures and functions of an organism, stored in the form of sequences made up of 4 chemical bases: adenine, cytosine, C, guanine, G, and thymine, T. These bases pair up to form the structure of the double helix, with specific sequences of bases encoding information necessary for producing proteins, which are the molecular machines that carry out nearly every function in the body. The sections of DNA that encode these proteins are known as genes. Traditionally, scientists focused primarily on the genes that code for proteins, assuming that the bulk of DNA had a direct and functional role in the production of these proteins. However, as genome sequencing technologies advanced in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, it became increasingly clear that much of our DNA does not code for proteins at all. In fact, less than 2% of the human genome is composed of protein-coding genes. The remaining 98% was long thought to be junk DNA, a term coined to describe the sections of DNA that appeared to have no apparent function. For many years, scientists had little understanding of the function of non-coding DNA. It was considered to be leftover genetic material that served no active purpose, hence the term junk DNA. However, in recent years, advances in genomics have shown that this view is overly simplistic. While the non-coding regions of DNA do not directly code for proteins, many of these sequences are far from useless. They play important roles in regulating gene expression, controlling when and where genes are activated, and coordinating complex biological processes. For example, some non-coding regions are involved in the regulation of other genes, acting like switches that turn certain genes on or off in response to environmental or developmental signals. These regulatory sequences can influence everything from embryonic development to immune system responses and the way our cells respond to external stimuli. Scientists have also discovered that many of the non-coding regions of DNA are involved in the production of molecules called non-coding RNAs. These molecules do not get translated into proteins, but they perform a variety of essential tasks within the cell, such as helping to regulate the expression of genes and maintaining the structure of the genome. Non-coding RNAs are involved in processes like splicing, which is the process by which the mRNA transcripts are modified before being translated into proteins. Other non-coding RNAs play a role in cellular signaling and the maintenance of chromosome integrity. These discoveries have significantly altered our understanding of DNA, revealing that much of the so-called junk DNA actually has crucial functions that contribute to the overall health and function of an organism. One key area where non-coding DNA has been found to be especially important is in the regulation of gene expression. Gene expression is the process by which the information encoded in a gene is used to produce a functional gene product, typically a protein. The regulation of gene expression is vital for normal development, cellular function, and responses to environmental changes. The regulatory regions of DNA, which do not code for proteins, are responsible for determining when and where certain genes are turned on or off. This regulation ensures that genes are expressed at the right time, in the right cell type, and in the right amount. Misregulation of gene expression can lead to a variety of diseases, including cancer, developmental disorders, and autoimmune conditions. In addition to their role in gene regulation, some regions of non-coding DNA are involved in the structural maintenance of chromosomes. These sequences help to stabilize the chromosomes during cell division, ensuring that the genetic material is accurately passed on to daughter cells. Telomeres, which are repetitive sequences at the ends of chromosomes, are another example of non-coding DNA. Telomeres protect chromosomes from degradation and prevent them from sticking together, a function that is critical for maintaining genomic stability. As cells divide, the telomeres gradually shorten, which is thought to be a key factor in the aging process. In this case, non-coding DNA plays a vital role in protecting the integrity of the genome and preventing cellular dysfunction. The human genome is also home to a variety of sequences that are involved in evolution and adaptation. Some regions of non-coding DNA have been shown to be highly variable between individuals and populations, contributing to genetic diversity. This variation can affect how individuals respond to environmental factors such as diet, disease, and exposure to toxins. For example, variations in regulatory regions of DNA can influence how the immune system responds to infections or how the body metabolizes certain foods. In this sense, non-coding DNA plays an important role in shaping human diversity and evolution, and it is an area of active research in the study of genetics and personalized medicine. Despite these advances in understanding the role of non-coding DNA, it is still not entirely clear what all of it does. Scientists continue to investigate the many unknowns within the genome, including the functions of some of the more mysterious regions of non-coding DNA. Some of this DNA may have no current function but may serve as a backup or reserve for future evolutionary changes. It is also possible that some non-coding DNA may become functional under certain conditions, such as in response to disease or environmental stressors. The study of non-coding DNA is still in its early stages, and there is much to learn about its role in health, disease, and evolution. The idea that we use 100% of our DNA is a simplistic interpretation that fails to account for the complexity of the human genome. While it's true that every piece of DNA has some function, whether it is coding for proteins, regulating gene expression, or maintaining the structure of chromosomes, the claim that all of our DNA is used, in the traditional sense of directly contributing to cellular functions, is misleading. Much of our DNA plays an indirect role, regulating and supporting other processes in the body. In fact, recent research has shown that even the seemingly redundant or non-coding regions of DNA are far from useless. Rather than being remnants of evolutionary history, these regions are actively involved in a variety of crucial functions that impact everything from development to immune function. In conclusion, the myth that we use 100% of our DNA is based on an outdated and overly simplistic view of genetics. While the majority of our DNA plays a crucial role in the functioning of our cells and bodies, much of it does not directly code for proteins. Instead, non-coding DNA is involved in the regulation of gene expression, the production of non-coding RNAs, and the maintenance of chromosomal integrity, among other functions. The idea of junk DNA has been debunked as scientists continue to discover new functions for these regions of the genome. The full extent of the role of non-coding DNA is still being explored, and future research is likely to uncover even more ways in which these regions contribute to health, disease, and evolution. Understanding the true function of our DNA, including the non-coding regions, helps us appreciate the complexity of the human genome and underscores the importance of continuing to study the vast and intricate network of genetic material that governs life on Earth. The idea that humans have 100,000 thoughts a day is one of the most widely circulated and often repeated statistics in discussions about mental health, cognitive psychology, and productivity. This figure has been quoted in countless articles, books, and even self-help seminars, suggesting that the average person experiences a staggering number of thoughts each day. The sheer scale of 100,000 thoughts can seem overwhelming and may lead us to believe that our minds are constantly racing with ideas, worries, and distractions. However, this number is not based on solid scientific evidence, and in fact, it is a highly speculative figure that lacks any reliable empirical foundation. While the concept of having a large number of thoughts each day may feel intuitively true, the frequency and nature of our thoughts vary greatly between individuals, contexts, and even throughout the course of a single day. To begin with, it is essential to understand the origins of the 100,000 thoughts a day figure. The number is often attributed to various sources, but it has not been rigorously backed by scientific studies. Some sources trace it back to early works in cognitive psychology, while others suggest that it may have emerged from marketing or self-help literature as a catchy and impactful statistic. Regardless of its origins, the number itself is an oversimplification of the complexity of human cognition. It does not account for the fact that thoughts are not discrete, countable entities and that the experience of thinking is fluid and multifaceted. One of the reasons why the idea of 100,000 thoughts a day has gained such widespread acceptance is because it reflects the way we often perceive our inner mental lives. Many people feel that their minds are constantly active, bombarded with a never-ending stream of thoughts, worries, and ideas. This feeling of mental busyness is especially common in modern life, where the constant influx of information, responsibilities, and distractions can make us feel overwhelmed. The notion of 100,000 thoughts a day serves as a useful shorthand for this mental clutter, providing a tangible and concrete number for something that feels intangible and elusive. However, the reality is that thought frequency and the nature of our thoughts are far more variable than this statistic suggests. The human mind is incredibly complex, and the way we think depends on a wide range of factors, including our environment, mood, cognitive state, and individual differences. Thought frequency can vary significantly from person to person, and even from one moment to the next within the same individual. Some people may experience a high frequency of thoughts, particularly if they are anxious, stressed, or hyper-focused on a particular issue. Others may experience fewer, more spaced-out thoughts, especially if they are relaxed, engaged in a task, or in a meditative state. There is also a significant difference between the types of thoughts that occur throughout the day. Thoughts can range from fleeting, automatic, and unconscious mental processes, such as daydreaming or mind-wandering, to more deliberate, focused, and purposeful thinking, such as problem-solving, planning, or critical thinking. The 100,000 thoughts figure typically includes all types of thoughts, including those that occur passively, without our conscious awareness. For example, when we are walking, cooking, or commuting, we may experience a continuous stream of background thoughts that do not necessarily require active attention or decision-making. These automatic, background thoughts can accumulate rapidly, but they do not necessarily have the same weight or impact as more intentional and focused thoughts. Moreover, the concept of thought frequency is complicated by the fact that thoughts can be interconnected, layered, or repetitive. A single thought may lead to a cascade of related ideas, associations, or memories, making it difficult to count individual thoughts accurately. For example, when thinking about an upcoming meeting, one thought may trigger memories of past meetings, lead to a series of worries or anticipations about the future, and result in a chain of related mental images or emotional reactions. In this case, counting each individual thought as a discrete entity would be an arbitrary and inconsistent exercise. The idea of 100,000 thoughts a day fails to account for the dynamic and interconnected nature of our mental processes. In fact, some experts argue that the number of thoughts we have in a day is irrelevant to understanding how our minds work. Rather than focusing on the sheer quantity of thoughts, it may be more productive to consider the quality of our thinking and how we manage our mental processes. Research in cognitive psychology and neuroscience has shown that attention, focus, and self-regulation play key roles in shaping the content and frequency of our thoughts. People who are more skilled at managing their attention, for example, may experience fewer distractions and more intentional thinking, while those who struggle with attention control or who are prone to anxiety may experience a higher volume of intrusive or unproductive thoughts. The ability to manage and direct our thinking is crucial for achieving clarity and mental well-being, regardless of how many thoughts we may have each day. Another important consideration is the influence of external factors on thought frequency. In our modern world, we are constantly exposed to a barrage of information from digital media, social media, advertisements, news, and personal messages. This constant flow of external stimuli can contribute to an increase in the number of thoughts we experience as our minds attempt to process and respond to this information. The pressure to multitask, stay connected, and keep up with the fast pace of modern life can lead to mental overload, causing us to feel as though we are constantly thinking. This sense of mental busyness is often exacerbated by the distractions of technology, which can make it difficult to focus on a single task for any length of time. The ubiquity of smartphones and the internet has made it easier than ever to feel overwhelmed by thoughts, and the perception of having 100,000 thoughts a day may simply be a reflection of the clutter and distractions in our modern environment. Additionally, the number of thoughts a person experiences can fluctuate depending on their emotional state. People who are stressed, anxious, or emotionally upset may experience a higher frequency of racing thoughts, worries, and ruminations, whereas those who are in a calm, relaxed state may experience fewer and more focused thoughts. Mindfulness practices, such as meditation, have been shown to reduce the frequency of intrusive thoughts and help individuals develop greater control over their mental processes. By training the mind to be more present and aware of its thought patterns, individuals can cultivate a state of mental clarity, which contrasts with the overwhelming and chaotic experience of having countless thoughts racing through the mind. Research in cognitive neuroscience has also shown that the way we think is influenced by the brain's networks and activity patterns. Studies using brain imaging technologies like functional MRI, fMRI, have revealed that different regions of the brain are activated depending on the type of thinking we are doing. For example, the default mode network, which is associated with mind-wandering and self-reflection, is active when we are not focused on external tasks. In contrast, the executive control network, which is responsible for goal-directed thinking and decision-making, is activated when we are engaged in tasks that require concentration and problem-solving. These networks work together to shape our cognitive experiences, and the interaction between them influences the frequency and quality of our thoughts. Rather than being a static number, the frequency of thoughts is a dynamic process that is constantly changing based on the brain's internal activity and external influences. In conclusion, the myth that humans have 100,000 thoughts a day is not based on solid evidence and is a significant oversimplification of the complexities of human cognition. The number of thoughts we experience varies greatly from person to person and is influenced by a wide range of factors, including emotional state, attention, external stimuli, and cognitive processes. While it may feel as though our minds are constantly filled with thoughts, the reality is that the quality and nature of our thinking matter far more than the sheer number of thoughts we have. The idea of 100,000 thoughts a day is an arbitrary and speculative figure that fails to capture the dynamic and interconnected nature of human cognition. Rather than focusing on the number of thoughts, it is more useful to understand how our thoughts are shaped by internal and external factors and to develop strategies for managing our thinking to promote mental clarity and well-being. The belief that memory works like a video camera is a commonly held misconception that has persisted for years. It's a familiar idea. We think of our memories as perfect, clear recordings, much like a video that captures every detail with precision and accuracy. According to this view, our memories should be reliable, showing events exactly as they happened without any distortion. This simplistic metaphor has been reinforced by movies, television shows, and even everyday conversation, where people often refer to replaying memories like watching a video. However, the truth about human memory is far more complex and less reliable than this idea suggests. Memory does not work like a video camera. Instead of being an exact, flawless recording of events, memory is a reconstructive process, a dynamic, flexible process that involves the brain piecing together information from different sources and experiences. Each time we recall a memory, it is subject to change and influence, making our recollections far less reliable than we often believe. The concept of memory as a perfect recording system has roots in early psychology and the desire to understand how humans process and retain information. Over time, the metaphor of memory as a video camera seemed to fit neatly with our intuitive understanding of how memories should work. However, as modern neuroscience and psychology have advanced, researchers have discovered that the brain's memory system is far from a static, unchanging mechanism. Instead, it is a complex, active process involving multiple areas of the brain and constantly influenced by various factors, including emotions, context, and even the passage of time. One of the key principles of modern memory research is that memory is not a perfect, photographic snapshot of past events, but rather a dynamic and reconstructive process. When we experience something, our brain takes in information from various sensory inputs, such as sights, sounds, and smells. This information is then processed and encoded into short-term memory. Over time, some of these memories are consolidated into long-term memory, where they are stored for later retrieval. However, when we recall a memory, it is not simply retrieved in a fixed form. Instead, our brain reconstructs the memory using bits and pieces of information, pulling from various sources, including past experiences, current knowledge, and even our own beliefs and expectations. The brain's reconstructive nature means that memories can be influenced and altered by external factors. For example, when we recall an event, our brain may fill in gaps with information that wasn't originally part of the experience. These gaps in our memories can be filled by new information we've acquired since the event or by our own assumptions about what likely happened. As a result, our memories are not exact replications of the past. Instead, they are dynamic reconstructions that can change each time we recall them. This is why two people who witnessed the same event may recall different details, or why our memories of a specific event may change over time, becoming more or less accurate depending on a variety of factors. One of the most well-known experiments illustrating the fallibility of human memory is the research on false memories. False memories occur when people recall events or details that never actually happened or that have been distorted in some way. In one famous study by psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, participants were shown a video of a car accident and then asked questions about it. Some of the questions used suggestive language, such as asking how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other, rather than simply asking how fast they were going when they hit each other. As a result, participants who were asked the suggestive question were more likely to recall the event as being more violent, with broken glass, even though no such glass was present. This experiment demonstrated that memories can be shaped and influenced by the way questions are asked or by the introduction of misleading information, showing that memory is not as reliable or accurate as a video recording. False memories can also be created through social influence or by the mere passage of time. For example, our memories of childhood events can be shaped by family members, friends, or even media, leading us to remember things that we never actually experienced. People may adopt memories or stories from others and incorporate them into their own recollections. Over time, these memories can become indistinguishable from real experiences, even though they are entirely fabricated. This phenomenon highlights the malleability of memory and the ease with which it can be influenced by external factors. Another factor that affects the reliability of memory is the role of emotion. Emotional experiences tend to be more vivid and memorable, but the intensity of emotion can also distort memory. Strong emotions can cause us to focus on certain aspects of an event while ignoring others, leading to a biased or incomplete recollection. For instance, someone who witnesses a traumatic event may remember specific details with great clarity, such as the faces of certain individuals involved or the sounds they heard, but they may have difficulty recalling other aspects of the event, such as the sequence of actions or the context in which it occurred. In some cases, intense emotions can even cause us to forget details or misremember them entirely. This is why eyewitness testimony in legal cases can be so unreliable, even when individuals are confident in their recollections. The passage of time also plays a crucial role in how our memories change. As time goes on, memories can become less clear or more distorted, especially if they are not regularly reinforced or revisited. The brain's memory system relies on repetition and rehearsal to keep memories fresh, so when we don't actively recall a memory or think about it for a long time, the details can fade or become altered. This is why people often report having difficulty remembering the specifics of events that happened many years ago. Additionally, the more times we recall a memory, the more likely it is to become distorted. Each time we recall an event, our brain is reconstructing it, and during this process, small errors can creep in, altering the memory in ways that we might not even notice. While memories are inherently fallible, they are not entirely unreliable. In fact, some types of memories, particularly those that are repeatedly revisited or emotionally charged, can remain relatively stable over time. However, even these memories are subject to distortion, and the line between true recollection and reconstructed memory can become blurred. This is why it is important to approach memories with a degree of caution, especially when it comes to recalling specific details or events. Memory, after all, is not a perfect recording of the past but a complex, evolving process that is shaped by both internal and external factors. In conclusion, the belief that memory works like a video camera, faithfully recording every detail and preserving it with perfect accuracy, is a myth that oversimplifies the nature of human cognition. Our memories are not exact recordings. They are dynamic reconstructions that can change each time we recall them. Memories are influenced by a variety of factors, including emotion, time, external influences, and even the way we are asked to recall them. The idea that we can replay memories like watching a video is a misleading and incomplete understanding of how the brain functions. While memories are certainly an essential part of human experience, it is crucial to recognize their fallibility and malleability. Understanding the reconstructive nature of memory allows us to appreciate the complexity of the brain's processes and encourages a more nuanced approach to how we perceive and interpret our recollections. Memory may not be a video camera, but it is a fascinating and intricate system that shapes our lives in ways we are only beginning to understand.